Okay, I think that we're live now. I do believe we're live now. And in place of Malpass's logic that we were going to go through, Alex is sick, and we had a suggestion from a Kaiser Cube that I open the floodgates on my channel to Milo Yiannopoulos and all things implied. And so what I'm going to do right now is turn it over and so that I can mess around with sort of the technical stuff and change the title of the Hangout and things like that. So welcome Kaiser Cube and give us an intro.
Hey, Helena, whoa.
I'm here. What? I'm still here. Did you say Helena? Whoa,
I just
whoa.
had two of you talking at the same time. Like you were talking like two of you at the same time.
All right, you might have the YouTube.
Yeah, you might have a live feed going too.
Yeah. So you want to check all your tabs.
Yep. Oh
and
shit.
Make sure you mute.
We've never heard that before.
Okay, I think I found it. I fixed it.
All right.
Oh shit.
That's all right. Listen, that's the whole reason why I'm turning it over to you, so I can go deal with that while you talk. All right, so here's Kaiser Cube. Maybe you start with, after it was clear that Malpass was canceled, you are the one that said, why don't you, open the floodgates? And so maybe you could talk about...
You said that, not me. You said that.
Well, I did say that it was going to be a floodgate thing, but you suggested, hey, why don't we just, I don't know, casually talk about Milo?
I believe my exact words were, hey, might as well let the genie out the bottle.
All right. So you define the genie while I mess with tabs and change the title of the Hangout and stuff, okay? So everybody, here is Kaiser Cube.
Oh.
I can't believe I'm doing this. Well, I just look. The thing is, I wanted to have a really fun, fun-driven debate. I just wanted to know what. Now, this isn't even a debate. This is like just pure thought turned to ideas. This is purely philosophical. This is purely just what do you think? What are your opinions? This can't be more opinion open. And this is not. I mean, if any of you guys know me, this is like not my repertoire. This is like the opposite of what I usually target as far as conversation. I'm usually more science-based. I'm really all science-based. I'm more empirical-based. The very word opinion kind of makes me cringe in general. I don't even know why I wanted to do this. But I guess it's just pure boredom and just I wanted to just see where it went, just out of pure curiosity, and all right. So you got Milo Jovan, Pop. I can't even say the guy's name. All right. So we got Milo here. All right, and then we've got the social justice warrior, the SJW phenomenon, and this guy seems to really bring out the source of how this started, or really the catalyst to it all, and it's like why would a gay why would somebody that's gay British gay be so anti-feminist and pro-Trump? How do you get that kind of combination? That's really.
Who are we talking about?
Well, I mean, I'm really trying to make a correlation between SJW and Milo.
That's who's Milo? I'm sorry. Yiannopoulos. Yeah.
Yiannopoulos.
Oh, right. Okay.
That's the whole thing. How do you have someone so into and really making a valid agenda such as this and it working? That's really
He loves Ann Coulter, right, and Donald Trump, right. What a dickhead.
But is it necessary dickheadedness?
Necessary. He does what? It's not necessary that he does it, I suppose, but yeah, I think I've seen him now on the telly. Yes, I'm vaguely aware of him now. Yes, he's a dickhead. Yes.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, so Milo Yiannopoulos may not be the perfect topic because some of us don't really even know who he is, but he represents something that I think maybe all of us are aware of. Maybe not you Brits necessarily, but so let me ask, Rumpy, have you heard of like SJW, regressive left?
Yes, I know what SJW.
Okay, so he's sort of the introduction to that topic. So maybe we don't necessarily sort of psychoanalyze Milo, although that would be really fun.
That's the crux right there.
All right, but maybe instead we talk about the implications that his name brings up. Like, is there such a thing as an SJW? Is there such a thing as a regressive left? Or are white nationals sort of trying to pick that word and in order to silence more liberal ideals? Is multiculturalism classically liberal? If it isn't, then what the heck is it, right? What's going on with feminism? Is this, like, our college campuses under a serious brand new threat, like no other threat that's ever been seen before? These kinds of questions, I think, are sort of always
safe spaces and things.
Safe spaces and things like that. These questions are bubbling around our community, right? To the point that I decided I was never going to touch it. Right? I was just like, I resolved I will never do a hangout. And here comes Kaiser Q. Oh, Malpass is sick. Hey, let's discuss Milo. So here we are. Maybe we should start. So we could start. I kind of see us as starting one of two ways. I really wish History Man could come in.
Apparently, he's blocked somebody.
Oh,
you got to figure out who he's blocked.
So okay, so maybe he will come in. He'd be a better framer than me.
Helena, I think you really hit a good nail on the point there about the regressive left. That's really the connecting piece there that should be talked about.
I think I agree with you. So you're suggesting we start with the idea of a regressive left, and you know who we need? Sorry about my scattered thinking. We need
I just like to point out that you wouldn't have gotten the regressive left if you didn't start out with the Tea Party a decade ago.
This is a fabulous point.
This goes way beyond one.
Yeah.
Okay, so stop. Let's have Hermine explain how she sees regressive left being tied to Tea Party, and then we will have people answer her. So go ahead, Hermine.
I'm just going to say it really simply. It's backlash from it. So what happened is we've had situations in our country that we've never dealt with. We've never dealt with at a core. We keep brushing it over, putting a Band-Aid on it. Meanwhile, it's freaking cancer, right? And we've kept we kept saying on both sides, we kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And it's a natural thing when a rubber band has been stretched too far that it's going to snap, and it's going to snap back hard. And I don't mean to make this one analogy after another, and I could go through situations, but I'd love to hear your perspective on it first. But the pendulum started to swing. It started to swing too fast and too far to the right, to such a place where we had government shutdown after shutdown after shutdown. We had situations where we were trying to do the best for the people, and we can all argue on what the best for the people are, but we had people who were just stalwarts, and with it, then you get this opposite side that's like, wait a minute, I'm not being heard. My issues aren't being addressed. It went to a situation where it was okay to say the N-word and be racist, but then, as soon as someone called you racist or called you out for being it, then that's not okay. And then people said, well, if you want to be racist, that's fair. I want a safe ground. I want a safe zone. And so it went so far to bizarreness on both sides that we've never heard with or dealt with. But the reality of it is, if we can't look at where this all started and fix both sides of it, it will continue to be this back and forth of bizarreness. And I'm done.
This is talk. And thank you. I actually do appreciate that. That's a very good reply. Look, this is why I love Dave Chappelle so much. He's one of those guys that really, I mean, when you look at his interviews, like for instance, in the Actors Studio, he really brings to bear. It's like this need to bring racism out into the open and to deal with it out in the open. And his work is a great reflection on that. And this back and forth stuff, both sides, both Republican and Democrat, both sides have been playing this political cat and mouse, and it's gotten to a point where the American people have really grown sick of it and grown tired of it. And that's really that's one of the major factors with Trump, is because they know he's not being pulled by strings. It's the whole idea of wanting something new, wanting something to change. It's always been like that. I voted for Bill Clinton on his second term. No, I was 18 on the second term. I voted for Barack Obama on his first term. I have when I vote for things moving, things changing. I don't like stagnant situations. That's never a good thing. And I'm just pointing out several just examples. I'm probably not getting anywhere, but I'm going to stop that. Anyway.
Okay, so I just need to ask everybody to check. However that is done, please check your block list, because it's imperative that Rich get in. So you want to check your block list, and if you have this person blocked, either unblock him or leave, because he's coming in, right? Because he's going to be the person. Okay, so Rich is known as the History Revolution, parentheses, Rich F-G. Okay.
Let me go people.
Wait, how would I know I'm blocking anybody? Am I?
I don't know. I don't know.
So what you do is you go onto Google Plus, on your home screen or the drop down there on the left nav bar. Go into people, look at your circles on the top nav bar, and then what you do. Hold on, they may have changed it. Let's see here. Under Actions, which is the second nav bar, you go into View Blocked. And it would be really nice if it was in alphabetical order, but it's not. And the guy's name one more time.
Okay, so he goes by two names. One's the History Revolution, and then in parentheses is his name. And then the other one, I think he just goes by Richard Frith I think it's God Be Gone or something like that. So you said you go to your Google Plus, because I'm checking too, because so I'm in my Google Plus, I'm in people.
And then under people, you got to click on your circles on the top, on that nav bar, and then there's something called Actions on the second nav bar. And on Actions, go to Blocked List or whatever.
View Blocked.
I only have one. It's Zaman Gubable. Good Lord.
Yeah, I don't have anything. So it's not me, and it's not the cube. Anybody else?
I'm looking through mine. I have a little bit longer of one.
Yeah, it's probably unproductive to have to look that way. Just have everybody open up the links to the profiles involved.
Oh yeah, can you just drop the link to his profile?
Oh, sure. Yeah, because he's. Yeah, hold on. Let me do that. So first I'm going to type history. There he is. Okay, there's one. So I'm going to click on it. Okay, and now I'm going to highlight the thing that came up, right? and then I'm
Okay.
going to go back into the Hangouts. I apologize, everybody, for this, but
It's
it's
an awkward
Rich.
time for me. I have.
He's the one saying that he's getting a message that somebody's blocked him or he's blocked somebody.
Okay.
So,
It's important to know who, he may.
yes. So
Okay.
that's why we're checking.
So I
Right.
don't have the history revolution. I don't have
I
him blocked.
don't have him either. So
Okay, so let me get his other name.
I sent Francis the link. So
Oh, good. Francis would be good too.
He's going to jump in here.
Here's his other one.
I missed the instructions. I had an error there for a moment. Where's this? It's in the your people, and you search where?
We're doing it a simpler way. If you
Okay.
come back to the chat within the Hangout,
Yep.
Helena put up a link to his
Yep.
2 profiles. If you click
Yep.
on there, you can see if you have them blocked.
That's right. If you see his profile, you're not blocked.
Yeah, and both of his links are there under that one post there. So
I
there are
don't have
two.
them blocked.
Yeah, kiddo.
Okay, so
I'll see if I can work with him and find out if he's got somebody blocked.
okay,
I
great.
think but I did once have an interaction with me, which I think I annoyed him slightly. So it could be he's blocked me.
That's, who knows? That's possible. I doubt it, but you never know, right? And we don't care who's blocked who. We just
No,
want to do whatever.
I can see him. So I might be making that up actually.
Right. We just want to do whatever we can to get him in here.
No,
Meanwhile,
I can see his pages, so I don't think it's me.
okay. So meanwhile, so I had to leave, right? But before I left, Ermaine laid out how she saw that this whole SJW thing sort of
Nadia,
got...
hang on. Nadia, he says you have him blocked. Apparently it's Nadia, though I don't recall blocking her. I can't unblock. Any ideas?
Nadia cannot unblock?
He can't unblock Nadia.
Ah,
What do you mean he can't unblock? He just goes to.
Yeah, but he doesn't know how. So give me some step by step.
Let's just go to Nadia's profile.
Okay, hang on, I'm typing it to him.
Copy paste her profile in there, and then he just goes to her page and hits unblock.
Okay, go ahead. I'll walk him through this.
Just give him that link.
Of Nadia's profile.
Yeah, I just dropped the link
Okay,
for Nadia's
Okay,
profile.
okay, yeah, gotcha. Okay.
All right, what was the question you were asking, Helena? It was in.
Sorry.
so I'm just kind of assuming that Rich is going to make it in. But so you were saying that, as far as you could tell, it seemed like this whole thing started when the Tea Party came in and did whatever it was that it did. My personal opinion is it mixed evangelical beliefs in with republicanism, but that might not, and it doesn't even matter if I'm right or not. Rich is, I think he's either studying for his PhD or is finished with his PhD in history, and so he's going to be like our framer for this conversation if he can come in.
Right.
But he just posted a video where he connected. He's talking about cultural shifts, sort of large cultural shifts and how they come about. And he was posing the question, just like sort of from the Renaissance to the end of the Enlightenment, there was this shift to individualism, I believe might have been what he said. It was really early when I watched his video. He's asking, is there a shift now? And if there is it moving from something, sorry, Rich, to martyrdom?
So wait, Helena. So you're talking about a paradigm shift equivalent to the Enlightenment movement?
Yes, just with respect to sort of activism and identity and that kind of thing. He's kind of asking,
This is moving into identity politics, isn't it? Which is going to get my goat.
Yeah, I knew it would get some goats. That's why we're here.
This is why I wanted to correlate Milo Popovich. No, I'm saying that wrong. I'm sorry.
Just call him Milo or Milo, whichever.
Look, he really is making a very good point on about a cultural revolution, and that's really the real word that's really need to be brought out is culture, not technology, not anything to do with natural philosophy or anything like that, but really culture.
Okay, so if I could say, Amin put in the side chat something that actually Rich had alluded to, which is, could technology be instrumental? So if we assume that there is a shift, and I don't like the assumption that it's moving to martyrdom, but regardless, technology, it seems, is probably instrumental. Now, you may want to sort of put it on a shelf until we sort of dig into the culture, but if we do that, we want to keep it in the back of our heads because really this is all of this confusion to me is happening on social media. And so for one thing that signals to me is that social media is sort of where we look to see the beginning of trends and to see the beginning of larger arguments that academia and then finally the general public will eventually notice themselves.
One question.
Yeah.
This SJW phenomenon. How easily can it be confused, or a better question, how easily can it be infiltrated? And I want to say infiltrated. That's not it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. How easily can it be infiltrated or utilized by people that are suppressed by the dominant feature by the real question to ask is how much of this movement is in favor of just overpowering the freedom of speech to a point to where they feel absolutely offended to the point of where it becomes a serious negative if anybody argues against it or even has a mind against it.
I'm a little bit confused by the question because I don't know that anybody in the social justice warrior side is trying to squelch anybody's freedom of speech. They're just trying to let people know that there's consequences for your free speech. So there's nothing wrong with saying anything inherently, but you might get knocked the F word out.
Okay, what kind of consequences are we talking about here?
I just said one. You might get knocked the F word out.
Well, that's not a consequence.
That's absolutely a consequence. You can call me the N word. You can say a multitude of things to me. You can be disparaging. You could be all sorts of things, and there's a consequence.
Right.
Okay.
I think I might tend to agree with Amin here, right? I mean, we're talking about like being blocked on Twitter. We're talking about
that's a consequence.
That's what she means.
Yeah, that's also included in the consequence.
Well, I'm really talking about what a consequence that's practical versus a consequence because of the way someone feel. I mean, really, if someone is offended, is that a real reason to block somebody?
Of course.
Well, first of all, that presumes that offense is the reason for the blocking. But second of all, let's just take that at face value. Well, it's someone's free speech to block someone who's rape threated them or called them the N-word or.
Right. But at the
like
same time, businesses are being sued because they're trying to practice their right to decline someone that's wanting to be offensive in their store.
Right, and those lawsuits is what happens when culture shifts, right?
Okay, that's we're having a direct conflict here with this is a direct conflict here. What you just said, basically you're saying that somebody can block somebody because they're saying something that's not in their favor or not something they feel is comfortable, but if somebody goes into somebody's establishment, if an entrepreneur is running a store and they're having a customer they can't deal with and they decline them service, this customer has the right to sue and will. And these cases are real. They've sued the store because they declined them service.
Yes,
Okay,
I agree, and I don't think anybody else would disagree that these cases are real. No one's saying, hey, these cases are fictional. Okay? We all agree that the cases are real. What I'm saying is, from an observer, if you can back up a little and look at it from an observer's point of view, and if we assume that there's some kind of cultural shift happening, then the lawsuits that you're talking about are just simply a reflection of that cultural shift. So to argue that no one should be allowed to sue is to be regressive in that you're saying, no, you can't sue for that shit. We never sued for that shit before, and I'm scared, and I'm concerned, and I'm worried, and I don't want these lawsuits even to be able to take place. That, to me, is a regressive attitude.
I've been talking about First Amendment rights the entire time. And I'm like, look, you got to pick a street. You can't have it both ways. This isn't a smorgasbord. That's all I'm saying.
Sorry to interrupt, just a text. Am I audible?
You're there, Roy. Francis,
Roy, do you want to speak?
Oh, Francis is there. Yeah.
We want to try to be mindful.
Francis, can you?
Francis, go.
Can you give me just a very brief recap? I just managed to log in.
Sure.
So just a super brief recap.
I'll give you a recap. I had it all planned to talk about modal logic, and then that suddenly got canceled. And so I said, does anybody have any ideas what they want to talk about? And Kaiser Cube said, hey, let's talk about Milo Yiannopoulos and all of the things that are implied by that name, right? And I said, oh, God, I swore off ever discussing that. And then a couple of people were like, hey, open the floodgates. What's wrong with you? And so I went, okay, all right, let's do it. And however, some of the people in this particular hangout don't even know who Milo is. So we just skipped discussing Milo and his impact, and we went immediately to the implicated issues that he brings up. SJW, that kind of thing.
Sorry, we went to what? The implied...
All of the implications that the name Milo Yiannopoulos brings to mind.
Yes.
So, and then I enumerated them, and I just did it off the top of my head, but I don't know that anyone would disagree. Feminism, anti-feminism, SJW, regressive left. Is there a cultural shift? What about free speech? How does technology play into this? That's probably enough right now.
Okay.
So that's the sort of area of discussion right now.
Okay. I shall now listen.
Okay. So, Cube, you were trying to make a point. So I made the point about lawsuits is part of what changes culture.
Not just lawsuits in general. I'm talking about a specific type of lawsuit in comparison with somebody blocking somebody on Twitter because they don't like their opinions.
What specific type of lawsuit?
Let's say you have an employer that feels the need to deny a customer service because of some kind of confrontation, and the customer goes back and sues the employer for some kind of any kind of racial discrimination, blah, 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 making up anything that they can think of to go into the courts to say I was denied service because of such and such discrimination, versus which have been successful lawsuits in the past, versus somebody just blocking somebody on Twitter or even blocking somebody on a YouTube channel for comments just because they don't like their comments. And
you're saying, from what I hear you saying, is like when I think of those type of lawsuits, I think of the civil rights movement and getting the right to eat at a diner, right? Is that one of the things that you would object to?
I apologize. If anyone can catch me up real quick, I had
oh God,
one of the roommates bring me keys to the other apartment and arrange for the last leg of my move. A pharmacist call about changing dosage, etc., not being covered.
Okay, so Nadia, we are first problem. Hold on, Cube. Let me just talk to Nadia for a second. The first problem is that it appears as though you've got Rich blocked. So we want to clear that up if we possibly can.
Hang on, no. He cannot unblock Nadia on his Rich account. So
see that both of those profiles are in my circles.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's having the problem on his one profile, and it's somehow not letting him in on either. That's what we're trying to resolve.
Okay, so Rich is going to work on that, and so Nadia, you're in the clear about that. The general discussion is, what the heck is going on in America? SJW, regressive left, is it a thing? What started it? If we grant that it is a thing, that kind of issue. And Cube and Ermine are discussing the idea of lawsuits and how that is different from blocking people on Twitter. And it seems as though, and I want to accuse Cube of being the regressive here, he doesn't like that these newfangled lawsuits are coming up. And
Okay,
he wants them not to exist. So that's my little accusation there at you, Cube.
Okay, I believe.
And what would be an example of this kind of newfangled lawsuit?
A perfect question. I will give a perfect example. This is a specific example. There was a bar in, I believe in Texas, that had a joke written on the one of their boards, like a joke board, and it read as this: "We like our beer like we like our violence. Domestic." Exactly. It is funny as shit. I love it. That is hilarious.
Are you creating a hostile working environment by having something like that?
If that were the case, then everybody that was employed in the establishment would have had a problem, and they did not. In fact, the employment in the establishment were the ones that came up with it. They thought it was funny as hell. Their patrons thought it was funny as hell, and it took one asshole to go in that bar and get offended. That caused all kinds of stink. Hey, we don't like that. I don't like that on there. It's triggering me. And like, look, we all like it. We all think it's funny as hell. If you don't like it, you can just go somewhere else. And guess what? This individual caused such a stink. I had the manager of the manager fired, and the waitress that had the idea of the joke fired. And just completely ruined two people's lives over something that was. It was a. How can? That's funny. I don't care what you say.
May I interrupt?
Thank you for that example. That clarifies what you're talking about with me.
It's a good example. I agree. I'm going to propose a thought experiment.
Before you do that, I would like to ask. I'm sorry, who was speaking a moment ago?
Kaiser
I just
Cube.
want to clarify. Kaiser Cube. Am I to understand that what you're saying is that you are objecting to this? You are objecting to this lawsuit as being frivolous and having caused harm over what many might consider to be an irrelevant or an unimportant issue. Is this your complaint with it, and that you're broadening this to the kind of zeitgeist of the time? Am I getting you?
Am I objecting to the lawsuit even being a case? Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, basically, you're talking about one person being offended by something that everybody thought else was funny, a benign situation, not hurting anybody. All right, and because somebody got triggered, like two people's lives got ruined, and the establishment lost God knows how much money.
Okay, let me ask just a stupid question. Why didn't they just take it down? It reminds me of the McDonald's case where the lady sued because she spilled coffee on herself. I don't know if you guys know the real background, but she was just asking for them to pay $2,000 in medical bills.
Okay,
I actually know.
Wait! I have the answer.
My hangout. For once, I get to go first. So there's so many different issues, and I want Francis to speak first, and then I want Emin to speak, if that's okay with everyone. But with respect to the McDonald's thing, if you really look at the case, that lady got burned to. I mean, her burns were serious burns.
And there's something else about it. You are right. I'm actually pro that case. Because
okay, so let me just continue before you continue. So I am interested in posing a hypothetical, which may or may not be fair, and I don't want to get it. If it's not fair, just drop it. But to you, this particular case seems frivolous. But can you imagine in the 30s a simple sign that said "No coloreds here"?
Yep.
Right? Or even an N-word sign that everybody, quote unquote, in the establishment didn't formally object to. But one brave soul said, if I'm going to try to change society, one thing I could do is sue. So this could be that, same kind of thing. So to you it seems frivolous, That's not so funny to me. I mean, I wouldn't sue, but I wouldn't want no suit to be possible because domestic violence is a serious issue to me, right? So, and now let's let Francis talk and then Ermine. If you still wanted to speak on that issue.
I wanted to speak. I would like to speak first, if you don't mind. I mean, Armenia gave a point that I need to rebuttal on immediately as soon as possible.
Okay, so that's okay with me. So you go ahead, and then we'll do Francis and then Ermine.
Okay, first off, the McDonald's case where the lady got seriously burned, that has absolutely no correlation to what I was talking about. I'll tell you exactly why. The main reason, there was another reason. There was another reason why she won that suit. There was no caution, there was no burn warning or a hot warning on that cup at the time. McDonald's did not have those policies at that time. There was no hot warning on that cup whatsoever. They did not give her any kind of inclination of any kind of possibility that if she grabbed it too hard, in which I've had that situation. You grab something too hard with a lid on it, it's liable to pop off. And that, I mean, you're talking about.
Okay, Kaiser, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I think that we're all okay with just dismissing the McDonald's case.
It is. I don't even know why it was brought up. That has
okay,
no.
So let's.
The reason it was brought up, and the only reason it was brought up, is because people looked at it as frivolous when it came up. That's my whole point. Anything can be seen as frivolous. It should go through a court system. That's the only point.
That's a very interesting point.
I think so.
I like that point. Okay, Francis, did you still want to speak on the issue?
He's muted. I'll unmute him.
Sorry, my fault.
That's okay. Yeah,
I think I can make I think I can make the distinction here. What Kaiser, there are basically two sides in this type of argument, and yes, the McDonald's thing is not directly related. Here are the two types. One is when we talk about no coloreds only, or blacks not allowed in cafes or cafeterias or what have you. What we're talking about is an actual measurable infringement upon legislated rights. Okay, so we're talking here. We're talking about something tangible. You know, an assault, a denial of rights. These things are measurable and they're actionable. On the other side, what we have are offenses to one's sensibilities, not to one's rights. So, for example, an off-colored joke. We like our beer, like we like our violence. Domestic. There is no right that is being infringed upon. There is no legitimate. There's no measurable harm done to anyone. What we have is a case where somebody's saying, well, this supports a point of view that I don't like. I find it distasteful, and further on, I believe that this could lead to a greater atmosphere. Well, could lead, potential, is not the same thing as a measurable breach of rights. And
so, Francis,
I think that what Kaiser is saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Sorry, I'll stop talking in a moment so that you can interrupt. I think that what Kaiser is saying is that people are failing to distinguish between immeasurable, tangible harm to legislated rights, to agreed upon rights, and to political sensibilities with the intention of not supporting that which has the potential to bring about harm.
Okay, so I understand what you
respond. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. I understand what you have said. However, those same arguments, the ones that you just made, could have been made back when it was what you consider to be a civil rights issue. So I would like for you to support how it is that you see it differently. What facts do you have? And then we're going to, well, I guess before you go, we're going to let Ermine speak real quick, and then we're going to let Nadia speak. And then we'll do Francis again, and then I want to get to Uriah. Okay?
Francis has already answered that question.
Okay, let's let Ermine speak.
Okay.
Or me, sorry.
So that's the point of differentiation that like I wanted to bring up is you gave a solid like distinction between the two. I would be interested in just following up this thought experiment in terms of if either one of the employees or one of the patrons came in and that incited them to violence towards their significant other. Is it then that you could argue that that sign effectively did that? And then could you have a lawsuit? See, I'm trying to understand because that's why I think it's such a, in my opinion, it's a poor support for it because you could just, somebody could say that was the effect of the sign
No.
and then still be suing the establishment potentially.
You're
That's
trying
Okay,
to
so
put-
let's
that's
have
why we have
Francis.
laws
that's
that are
taking the responsibility out of
We're,
it.
we're gonna have Francis answer that, and then we're gonna go to Nadia. So Francis, what about that?
Me?
Yes.
Your name's Francis.
The argument again that I'm sorry, I'm not keeping track of everyone's names. I apologize. The woman who just spoke again said, well, this could potentially lead. The thing about one brings someone to court to remedy or to cease or to cease or to cause to bring remedy for a harm done, not for a potential harm. Further, what you're doing is you're dismissing individual responsibility. Oh, it wasn't the husband or the wife who decided to beat the spouse because they were making that choice and therefore must be responsible for them. It's that they were influenced by a third element, a joke. There has to be a point in time when we accept that people are responsible for their actions, regardless of their surrounding. This is not a cult-like atmosphere.
Okay, so we're gonna let Nadia speak, and then after Nadia is done, we're gonna talk about harm versus potential harm and individual responsibility. So we're gonna deal with
P.S. You're running this like a boss.
Yeah,
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
I hope that was a compliment. I'm trying hard to moderate.
It was a compliment.
Okay, good.
You're
All right.
doing a good job, is what I'm saying.
All right, good. Okay, thank you. All right, Nadia.
So, yeah, I guess I raised the reckless endangerment and so a kind of issue in response to that last part. Secondly, I would object to, is that somebody on their end that's getting the clatter?
Who's
Yes,
making all that noise?
There's incredible
It's
clatter.
Francis. He seems to
I
be doing some
can't really hear.
chopping
I'm
some
sorry,
wood
go
or
ahead.
something.
Yeah, there's.
I apologize. I thought I was on mute.
Okay.
It's okay. And it's
Okay.
okay.
I
It's
have
okay, Nadia.
I will be able to
Let's
be
just
hearing.
work on the assumption that we're going to have
Okay.
to.
I hadn't actually finished.
We're gonna let you
Go ahead,
finish.
Nadia.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to cut you off, sorry.
Go ahead. Okay. So, first was, obviously the reckless endangerment is an example of, harm not necessarily actually executed. Second was the, what was it? I guess tangibility of that harm inflicted by, violation of rights is not quite what you proposed. I mean, rights are already abstractions; they are not tangible. Right. So you violate a right. You're the harm being done by its disruption, violation, critical damage to it, and such is entirely conceptual and abstract. Third, it is actually something of a straw man to characterize it as quote unquote somebody feeling offended. What is this notification that somebody's spamming me with, and make it stop? So the okay, the third part was incitement to prejudicial action and such is probably more of the kind of affair, anything on the order of somebody quote unquote feeling offended. And those incitements to prejudicial action, I mean, if you grant that, well, people said that the influence on anyone else are actually showing demonstrable, tangible harms like, cutting into people's paycheck, but people getting hired at all. People are allowed to even have a place to live and all that. So, yeah, in housing, healthcare, public accommodations, and so on are areas where these kinds of incitements of prejudicial action and the denial of such things to people are very concrete and measurable.
Okay, so we're going to do now, Uriah, you're going to explain about the civil rights point that you wanted to make, and then we're going to do another round where we incorporate harm versus potential harm as opposed to incitement to prejudicial action. In other words, it's not about offense, and we'll run through it again. So let's add Uriah's point about civil rights, and then we'll move again, we'll go another round. All right, so Uriah, tell us what you wanted to say.
Okay, I wanted to say that the purpose of an off-color joke is actually to bring awareness to something that is tensions while providing a stress relief from it. So an example was from Venaloid's video a while back. He said that his joke was how many police officers does it take to change a light bulb? He said none. They just beat the room for being black. Now, what this does is that it makes a setup, and then it brings to the head of the issue an actual problem that we notice in society, but it does it in a way that is not necessarily harmful, but it does bring awareness and relieves stress from that. So the difference between that and, say, someone putting up a sign that says "No colors allowed" is one is actually promoting the problem. One is trying to release the problem and bring awareness to it.
So that's going to depend on whether or not the sign putter-upper, thinks is the problem, right? So the domestic violence joke is very different. It's opposite from the beat the room for being black joke, right? So you bring up a good point, right? Should neither sign be allowed? The thing I'm saying is that this whole area, lawsuits for seemingly trivial signs, is what we're doing right now. I think it's quote-unquote regressive to try to say these lawsuits should not exist because cultures progress, cultures move, cultures change. So to just want to demand that nobody sue over it is to me regressive by definition.
Yeah, and Helena, and I want to make a very good point here. If anybody wants to make a big stink over something as I don't want to say potential, but I know that's the word going.
Why don't you just say as trivial as a nigger joke?
As trivial, and I wouldn't say it's that trivial. No, that's not what I'm saying.
You see the point I'm making, right?
No, I am, but I'm not. Well, I'm not in that. Hold on a minute. Don't put words in my mouth.
Okay, I won't.
If anybody wants to make something like this thing with the bar situation I was talking about this trivial, then you are going to have to omit all movies being made, all cinema being made for the bad guys winning, the bad guys killing a good guy. You're going.
I wholeheartedly disagree with that. Come on, get serious. Look, Kaiser Cube.
Well,
I respect the point you're trying to make.
You're opening a can of worms.
Yes, okay, we both agree. It opens a can of worms.
I
agree.
A can of worms.
It is a can of worms, but it's the can of worms that we are opening, right? It doesn't mean, therefore, all movies, blah, 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 right? It's going to happen one lawsuit at a time the way culture does shit.
Okay,
Yeah.
that might, I might be fast tracking the way I'm speaking might be a fast track version of it. I admit.
Okay, so now let's go back around the room. I don't want to lose the
I'd
points.
like to bring up a point.
Please do. So Francis will go, and then Nadia. Francis, go.
Another factor that I see here is that people are wanting to try others for their intentions rather than for their actions. When we start explaining whether a joke does good or bad or this or that, again, you cannot try a human being for their intentions. I might be the most ill-intentioned individual on the face of the planet, provided I do no harm. There should be no problem. It's like
okay, so
saying,
I want to smash that right away. My husband is a criminal defense attorney. Everybody talks about intentions. Intentions is the thing. So that's what we do. So that
yes,
argument
but you're
that
not
we shouldn't do
tried
that.
for your intentions. You're
Oh,
tried
Yes, you
for your
are.
actions.
Oh my God, are you kidding? The intention determines the level of the offense.
No,
Yeah,
mens rea
manslaughter
only comes
and
to
murder.
support an action that has been taken.
Hey, you guys,
one
look,
is not charged for mens rea.
What is it? I'd note that affairs like reckless endangerment and attempts to carry out actions like attempted murder or whatever are actually relatively routine affairs. I'd also note that I'm a little bit of a materialist, so I have a rather different assessment of this affair.
Hey, at least you're down to earth. At least you're down to earth guy, girl, whatever.
How am I down to earth?
You're a materialist. How can you be materialist and not be down to earth?
He was making a joke.
You ought
It
to.
was a joke.
Okay. Well, you may want to familiarize yourself with the work of Patricia Churchland. Now, on the other hand, I'd also note that the what is it? Generally, this progressivist thing. I'm actually against progressivism because it's counter-revolutionary.
It is. It is. Anything that prevents people from speaking how they like to speak or need to speak, and no matter how people might feel against it, that's just can't happen, man.
Of course, but
that's not quite what Nadia's getting at.
Yeah,
that's
not what I'm getting at all.
Right. But Nadia, I don't want to open up another forums because we still have to deal with some of these things. So let's all step back. Yeah.
I might be too far to the left or something.
Yeah, well, it's I would love to get into this into the hangout that you are implying, right? Because that's a huge, that's even bigger. But let's stay where we are. So I was thinking that we would go back now and review sort of some of the things that got said recently. So we want to talk about harm versus potential harm. We want to talk about how that's fake. Is it right? How offensive is fake? How an offense is actually incitement to prejudicial action. And then we want to talk about individual responsibility and how that plays into it. And then we'll move on to some of the things that were recently just raised. James, you wanted to talk. Go ahead.
Nadia, are you planning on hanging around, or are you coming back, or are you going out, or what are you doing?
You're going with me to the store.
Okay, Rich only has an hour. Could you drop out so he can come in for an hour and then you can come back in?
I am.
He can't get in.
Nadia is very much engaged in the conversation. I'd rather ask anybody else.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to drop out.
No. He can't get in because of her. But you.
I see.
Won't let her profile be unblocked.
Well, he's got to figure that out.
Yeah, this is really a come first thing. I mean.
No, I understand that. I was just asking. That's okay.
So I guess, Nadia, are you willing to drop for a promise that in 15 minutes I will do everything I can to get you back in so that at least Rich can come in and frame the argument for us from a historical perspective. And then if you can't get in, Rich will leave.
Hell, I'll even drop for you.
No, it's not that. It has to be Nadia because that's where the problem is.
No, he meant he would drop to let her back in.
Yes.
As would I, because I'm like this is stuff that I'm not really. I love helping Helena, but this isn't stuff I discuss a whole lot. So
Same here.
All right, so Nadia, is that all right with you? You drop, let Rich come in, let him frame the argument because he's really our serious knowledge guy, and then we'll do what we need to get you back in, even if that means that Rich is the one who has to drop. Is that all right with you?
I think he's okay with that too.
Yeah, is that okay with you, Nadia?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, so you've got to leave because I don't want to do whatever because I want you to be able to come back in.
Well, I'll just hit reload, and while it's in the splash screen to re-enter, I won't actually be in here, then he'll come back in.
Okay, perfect. Do
Thanks,
whatever.
Nadia.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
Thank you, Nadia.
We'll see you back.
All right, Rich, if you don't come in here, I'm going to be really
I just sent them the note to try. So.
All right. So let's talk about, is it really about potential harm, or is it in fact about incitement to prejudicial action? Does anyone want to speak on that issue?
Just one small thing.
Okay, go.
Is it really just about venting?
Please repeat, is it really just about what?
Venting.
Venting. Just
All right, there he is.
venting.
Okay, so the is it really just about venting to me is a rephrase of is it really just about offense? So if we could put that on the shelf now that Rich is here, and let's have Rich frame this argument for us. Hi, Rich. I'm so glad you made it in.
Hello. Firstly, I did try everything. I have actually unblocked every single person I've got blocked on every single account. So I'm expecting that's about 3 people, so it's not that horrific.
Well, I'm really glad you're here. I think at least I will absolutely, without any shadow of a doubt, could defer to you. You are the person with all of the historical knowledge, and I was hoping that you would frame this for us, especially in light of the martyrdom video that you just put up.
Yes,
all right, so the floor is yours.
Okay, martyrdom's not my word. It's used by somebody else, or victim culture. Basically, the idea that's floating about now is the idea that we're going through a shift in what is known as an emotional regime. Okay, so there's a change in emotional regimes. For a long time in our history, honor was the main thing that bound us emotionally. It was about how you transferred honor from one person to another. The way people would be executed would be all about honor. The dishonorable would be killed and drawn and quartered. The very honorable, like say Anne Boleyn, would be killed quickly with steel because that's a man-made thing. Everything was about honor. Your children would often take on the guilt of their parents and so on. Hence Adam and Eve and all that kind of stuff. That's how far back it goes back. Sometime around the Enlightenment, people started to talk about equality and dignity. So instead of your worth being based upon your honor and your family, it started to be an inalienable right that you had to dignity, to being equal, right? And this all started to shift around the Enlightenment, enshrined in the French Revolution that everyone is equal except the Haitians, but let's not go there. So there's a shift towards what we now think of second nature, as if it's normal, democracy, all these lovely things all come out of the idea that we're all equal, we've all got the right to vote, right? Not just people with property, not just men, yeah, everyone's equal. What's the idea is, and this is not my idea, I can't remember whose it is, but I'll cite them when I remember. I've heard a few people, is that we now seem to be going through a similar shift towards what they have called either a victim or a martyr culture. I prefer to call it an oppression privilege culture, where worth is not based upon us all being equal, but rather us understanding or being reminded of our positions within a shifting hierarchy.
Correct.
And this is why things like intersectionality and all that are starting, which are quite 30-year-old ideas, are now starting to really flourish.
Rich, don't you think of that as a
We're going to let everybody stop. We're going to let Richard continue. We're going to
But
give him the
don't you
deference
think of
that
that as a
academics that academics require. Okay, you can. I promise you will go next, Kaiser. Okay, but Richard, he's an academic. He needs his space. So we're going to give him a safe space to explain the entire thing. Then you can go. All right. Please continue, Richard. You were explaining how the shift was moved to dignity, and now you're seeing perhaps another shift.
Another shift is what the idea is, that there is a shift. Now, whether this shift is happening, has happened, because often these things happen long before we feel the, it's like a pebble being dropped in an ocean. You only really notice when the waves get higher. Or whether it's about to happen. The argument is, yes, it seems to be happening, at least at an academic level, at least an elite level. I was speaking to another historian friend of mine, and she was saying that the thing about the equality idea, the dignity idea, is that was great for all the people at the top, the intellectual elites, the rulers, but actually on the ground people were sort of, what equality, what dignity, as they dug out a sewage farm for £5 a day. The sort of what you're talking about. And so is it that the people who have been traditionally oppressed all this time are now finding a voice? And that's what they're actually saying. That this is basically a bunch of people saying, what equality?
That's
what
correct.
are you talking about?
Okay. So
now, I'm not making a moral judgment here. I'm simply stating a possibility for discussion. So don't come screaming at me saying, oh, that's JW, because I'm none of these things.
May I ask Richard a question?
We all know you're not an SJW.
I wanted to go first. I wanted to keep it fresh, if possible.
All right, keep it fresh, and then I'll go in with my stale argument. Go ahead, Kaiser. Go.
2 points. Number one, Richard. Do you think of the suppressive? What did you refer it to as? The oppressive.
The oppressive, privileged culture.
Culture.
Is just a title that's a little less loaded.
Do you see any issue with that being a cycle, a redundant cyclic issue as far as the culture itself? Do you see any kind of resolve happening from it? That's the first problem.
Well, there's the question: is where are we headed with this? Is it headed? So is it going to fizzle out? Is it going to actually transform the idea of an emotional regime? Is that there are a set of reactions to our feelings now, whatever theory of emotions you buy into, of which there are trillions. The idea is that we all buy into a particular way we're supposed to react when there's an emotional pressure on us, right? And so the idea is when we were honor-bound, honor was the great emotion, the big emotion, and all of our attractions and aversions will be based upon how it would affect our honor. Now it's sort of based upon inalienable rights. It's my right. I can do that. I can do what I want. I'm an individual. I'm free. I'm equal to everyone else. The idea is that there could be a shift if this continues, where there's a generation, the post-millennial generation, who will say, my emotional reactions to things, my attractions and aversions, I base upon a structure of how privileged and or oppressed I am. Believe myself to be, whatever you want to frame it. So if there is somewhere this is heading, that would be where. Yep, go ahead.
First of all, I mostly agree with what you're saying, and I would like to offer different phrasing to see whether you agree or disagree with it. What I perceive, from my point of view, what we're seeing is a resurgence of class consciousness. I will claim that it goes back to the Marxist times, but we can take or leave that. But what I perceive is a difference where the class now has a dominant moral influence or authority over the individual, and that each individual claims to be quote-unquote representative of a class. Therefore, when you are arguing for your rights to not be offended or your right to do this or someone's lack of right to do that, that they are not representing their singular selves but a class in general. Do you agree or disagree?
I think that's very interesting. There's a couple of things I would point out from that. Firstly, class, it's difficult with phraseology because we don't have the words yet. One of the things that happens during one of these shifts is new words are invented to describe what's going on, right? So class, I see what you mean. You don't mean as in the old-fashioned working class, middle class, upper class per se. Yes, that's part of it, but we're also talking about ethnic groups, gender groups, non-trans groups, all these kinds of see themselves as what you were saying as a class. Am I right there?
Well, when I use the word class, you're right. I'm no longer bound by very specific solidified terms. But when I say class, I suppose that what I mean, a more common phrase these days might be identity group.
Absolutely.
Identity group. Yeah. Okay. So yes, I think in that case that is sort of what we're seeing. And we're also seeing another parallel to the last shift is that the driving force of this is predominantly old-fashioned style middle class, because the Enlightenment thinkers tended to be middling sorts. The elites were too busy running countries, the poor were too busy not starving to death. So it was those people who ain't enough money to get to 6 o'clock in the evening and go, right, I'm done for the day. Shall I go for a coffee? That became the Enlightenment thinkers, you know. And I think there seems to be something about this as a middle class thing as well. So that's the other point. But I do think you're right. I think it is about this is my class, but it's also very complicated because we're talking about intersectionality here. So these classes are almost infinite in the mind of people that are thinking like that. You know,
and Richard, that brings me to my other issues. Like this movement is really troubling me because I really see a severe lack of practical application in this movement. It's very susceptible to fizzle out very easily, be overtaken very easily if there is no grounded resolve in it.
Well, yeah, that's a question. Will there be a fizzle out as the group, the classes? I'm going to use that word. We all know what it means now in this group. Classes splinter into more and more and more. Will we end up, you know, with it becoming incredibly individual? And at that point being unsustainable because there aren't any groups who can mobilise, who can cause political change. I don't know. Maybe the opposite will happen. What will happen is people start to realise there are these similarities and come together in all sorts of ways and say, right, I am, again, if you buy into it or not, I sort of do, some people don't. If you're an intersection of this and that and the other, in this particular argument, this is the part of me, if you like, that I'm going to fight for, while keeping an eye, while being aware that I'm many things. So I don't know. I mean, I can't predict the future. That's one thing history can't do. All I can do is say, as most historians do, we've seen it before. Isn't it interesting? But it doesn't necessarily, maybe it will fizzle.
Well, it reminds me of the post French Revolution after. After all of the hierarchies were beheaded, everybody that was in power, and everybody was like, well, what do we do next? And there was this decades of poverty in France, before they recovered from that. I mean, when you have a demographic, a large demographic that doesn't know what they're doing, you get that result.
Well, the thing is, when there's a massive change in the past, it has led to something enormous happening somewhere. I mean, look at the French Revolution and the American War of Independence. Sorry, American Revolution. No, I'm English. American War of Independence. Yes, when we fought the French. Sorry. And anyway, so things happen because it's partly because of this change in mindset. There was the Americans in Boston wouldn't have dreamed of throwing that tea into the water if there hadn't been an intellectual change that actually they had the right to representation. Why the hell weren't they getting representation? When it was an honour culture, they would have just said, well, that family are the most honoured family, we revere to them, that's the way it is. So the reasons for the change to honour to dignity, by the way, are so long and varied that I've just taught a 12-week course on it, so we'll not go into that now.
Well, do you mind if I change the subject just very slightly, involving the...
Let me know when anybody else can ask questions, too.
I'd like to hear some more questions, yes.
I'm going to retract. Go ahead, yeah, please.
Okay, so we're going to give the floor to Ermine.
Yes. I really appreciate that. I was just... before you were in here, we had a few questions in terms of, and I see this a lot as a great racial divide going on right now with things like, first of all, the internet has just, and video, how it has really allowed things that have been going on, in my opinion, for a very long time to have some visibility. But we have groups such as Black Lives Matter. I think it should be called Too, or also somebody else agrees with that. We have Black Twitter. We have, and I can just speak to the ones I know. We're seeing it in cultural appropriation. We're seeing real issues just kind of brought to the table. And what I'm concerned with the way of the conversation where it's leading, it's almost like devaluing one culture again and saying that they're spoiled brats, as opposed to really dealing with what the real issues are. I think in any situation, you're always going to have a few court cases that are cluster, you know what's, but to not bring some of those to the table is a different way of silencing people that I have a real issue with. So as I'm listening to and I'm understanding a little bit more where people I'm coming from, I'm getting more and more uncomfortable.
Right.
Because what I feel like is, once again, I'm getting drowned out, and or my view in the cases that I mentioned is getting drowned out by some perceived like conservatism that says I don't feel comfortable with anything changing. What is the resistance to change if everything that you said is correct and we are going through a change?
I mean, this is a really good point, right? I mean, intersectionality may have the phrase intersectionality may be new, but Sojourner Truth said "Ain't I a Woman" a frickin' long time ago, right? So you know, I don't. I'm a little bit baffled by this backlash. So maybe, Rich, you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, backlash has happened. Coming back to the French Revolution, that was quite a backlash to terrors. Let's round up all the privileged, as we now call them, and chop their heads off. You know, that was kind of a. The pushback is people don't like change. I mean, I think it's a psychological, sociological issue that all the time studies show that we are pattern matching machines, and when the patterns get subverted, we don't like it very much. We're brought up to believe something, you know.
What seems new to me, very strongly. What seems new to me, and then we'll deal with, then Francis, you can state your objection, but if there's anything new, it's that the people who usually are pro-change are also fighting this particular change, right? They're calling intersectional proponents and the kids in the universities and things like that. They've attached the word regressive to that, and that's coming very often, not always, but very often, from a faction of the left. So it's now the left that is fighting change, and that's what's a little baffling to me.
I think
it's freakish. It is literally freakish to me.
I think, personally, I think the changes I see are. I mean, it's a problem in that there are reactions going on. There's it's almost a class of cultures or a class of generations or whatever you want to call it, which is another thing that happens during these periods, where you get a generation who will just say, "But you can't shut me up. This is freedom of speech," a phrase which I find completely inadequate anyway. But it's and then you'll have the other group saying, "No, it's not about freedom of speech. It's about you taking responsibility for what you're saying and there's not wanting to hear it." And because another group saying, "Well, no, because if you let these people hear it, then you can argue against it." Something I have a lot of time for, actually. I think air people's stupid views and tell them they're stupid. But that might be because I'm 39. It might just be that.
So if you've got a lot of time for it, I want you in my Hangouts, mister.
Okay.
Richard, you have no idea how much I love you, my friend.
All right, so Francis wanted to make an objection. Let's hear it.
My objection is this: listening to Hermione speak. It's
Hermine.
Thank you.
Hermine, yeah.
Okay, so listening to you speak, I'm sensitive to two things. I'm sensitive to presuppositions, and I'm sensitive to language. So when I listen to you speak, and I'll ask for like a full minute to speak here. When I hear you speak, what I'm hearing is a presupposition that is different than mine. You wanted to know what's different. The presupposition that I take, that I advocate for, is that every human being is self-responsible. Collectives, groups, classes, castes, call them what you want, are all composed of individuals. The flow of how these groups of people move is based on the flow of choices and behaviors taken by individuals. This is the assumption of everything that we're discussing, whether it be the court cases or whether it be classes. Who is responsible? I claim that I am 100% responsible. I take full credit for my good, and I take full responsibility for my bad. And it is up to me to live up to the highest possible standard that I can. Now, when what I hear in your language is the language of oppression. This is happening to me. I am a passive recipient of forces greater than I. Whereas I realize that human beings are affected by their social environment, by their physical environment. We're affected by the world around us. This does not, however, remove our utter and complete responsibility for ourselves, even in the face of difficult environments. So you were asking, what is the difference? The difference is a social conservative leans highly upon individual responsibility. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. A social liberal believes very much in loving and caring and assisting and being empathetic and care for, love thy neighbor. So you have pull yourself up by the bootstraps compared to love thy neighbor. And the problem is this is splitting. The two need not be a dichotomy. One can pull oneself up by their bootstraps and be caring, but you can't. It's got to be win-win or no game. If it's I win, you lose, that's oppression. If it's you win, I lose, that's self-sacrifice. It has to be I win, you win, and if we don't find an answer, well, let's work it out. But pointing our fingers at each other and calling each other's names and saying, oh, well, we're being oppressed or you're oppressors, this is going to get no one anywhere.
Okay, so Ermine's gonna. Okay, thank you, Ermine. You please respond, and then Rich, see if you can sort of generalize and abstractize what's being said,
Right.
if that's what you want to do.
There's three things I want to first address. One is, and I'll address the other two after you specifically point to what in my language was making you feel that I was being oppressed by anybody besides me.
What I made the claim was I was hearing the language of oppression.
Specifically what? That's why I'm asking for the specifics.
And unfortunately, this is like 4 minutes ago, so I don't remember exact phrases. I remember the impression that I got.
Are you saying that you're not oppressed? Are you saying that you're...
No. I'm asking the questions now. It's my turn. So could it be that it was not necessarily that you heard anything that allowed me to believe that I was being oppressed anything by myself, but that is your frame of reference and your rose-colored glasses is to believe when anybody brings up issues or when I brought up the circumstances that I brought up that you believe that I was being oppressed by something
Negative.
outside of myself.
Do you feel oppressed?
No. It's still my floor. Okay, so we said negative, so I will accept that. Okay, so then I have two questions specifically. One of them is you brought up the whole notion, and I'll bring it as step one, as the presupposition is every human is self-responsible. My question was that, does change happen individually or does change happen within a group? So if we're seeking change, and we can change within ourselves, but we're talking about societal change. And if we don't form groups and bonds, how does change actually occur? So that's one question, but I'm going to follow it up by a second one. And that belonging in that group, again, it follows up. Does that not make change happen? So do we not say that we're individuals but that belonging or finding those similarities with other individuals is exactly what makes things progress. And then lastly, oh, and I asked the last question. So go ahead on really how change happens or occurs from your standpoint.
Francis,
Okay.
can I make a supplemental?
No,
please?
I would no. I want him to answer my questions, please.
I agree. Let's have Francis answer the question specifically.
Yes, and I really appreciate the way that you're handling this. We deal with one issue and then we allow other people to bring in issues. It keeps the conversation flowing tightly. So I'm kind of on your side here. I would, the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear you ask those questions is, how does change happen? Change does not happen. Change is not a thing that magically appears out of nothingness. People behave in one way that is similar or different to what they did previously. Now, the context that you want to bring change in, and do correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to accurately reflect what you're saying here. What I understand you saying is, how do we make things better? Is that correct?
Well, I would hope that that's what we would change for the better, but I've seen it change for the worse as well. But yeah, but that's what I would hope. So yes.
Okay. So when we start from this point, change means going from point A to point B. When we say, when I was talking about presuppositions, when we talk about change, how does change happen? Well, the question are you suggesting that change must occur from what to what? And then as soon as we start asking such questions, we get more specific and we get into the physical tangibilities of the world rather than just bandying about. So when you were asking what were some of the presuppositions in your language that I was responding to, this would be an example. The notion that change for its own sake, undefined, is somehow required or necessary, which implies what? That we want to change from A to B. Well, what's wrong with A? So on. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
The only thing I know is constant in life is change. It's the only thing I know that's constant. So
the only thing that's constant in life is people changing things.
Well, I said is change. So if you want to be more specific about it and we can find agreement, then that's fine. With that,
I think it's really important to specify that what we're talking about here are behaviors that affect other human beings, individual behaviors affecting other individual human beings, and individual behaviors affecting the environment. Not just this magical thing called change happening. We have to be tight about what we mean.
And I want you to also see that it's not just the individual behaviors that really affect change. It's the group behavior that affects change.
And the group is composed of what?
I don't doubt that, but you're not going to get change individually.
Why not?
It doesn't happen that way. Give me an example of when an individual made a societal change.
Okay, so we're talking about societal change, not just change. So if one individual changes his or her behavior, well, okay, at what point do we determine when it's societal and when it's individual? How many people is that? 1, 3, 10, 50, 100, 1,000?
Well, I don't think it's fair to ask her to quantify how many.
Yeah, I'm never going to quantify that. I can't. It depends
on
the
it's
change.
important.
One of the things I want to bring up that I think might segue us over to Rich is the following question, and you know, pardon my stupidity, right? But Rich will fix me up. So I'm thinking to myself, you know, thinking of the civil rights movement, and what did they do? They had individual people who were oppressed and powerless, and they got together as a collective. That's actually what they did do, right?
Yes.
They didn't have the words, they didn't have the catchphrases. So my question is, what is different? What is literally different, practically different, other than using the new words, and they're not super new, but they're relatively new, like collective and identity and things like that. But other than using those words, how do the two forms of activism differ? And so I'm hoping that that's good enough to to pass to Rich, and then we'll go with whoever wanted to go next.
Two forms of activism differ. So the whole topic here is interesting because if there's one thing a historian does is they study continuity and change. It's kind of the bedrock of the whole discipline. I actually think, going back a little while, that discussion, is it an individual or is it a group, is a misunderstanding of how things happen. Because you could, going back to my period, because of course I'm going to do that, you could say Descartes changed the world. One publication changed the way humans view themselves, changed the conception of what a soul is, changed the conception of how people should do philosophy. It changed everything. But Descartes couldn't have done that without the Cartesians, without people picking up his ideas, spreading them, making them the ideas. And Descartes couldn't have happened without the French skeptics. He couldn't have happened without the reaction against Aristotelianism and the reactions of the humanists when they started to find the old texts and found that people used to argue a lot. All these things come together. You can't take one individual and say they changed everything. But at the same time, it's not really a group either. It's such a change is based upon such a complicated thing. Things like it being an ice age, a little ice age, that has played a part. Crops that don't grow, people that are hungry, people that are angry, all sorts of things contribute to change. And sometimes it is a group of individuals who all collectively have the same belief structure. So if we're talking about something which is not really my field, but something like the civil rights movement, there's a moment where a lot of people have the same anger, and they find out that all these individuals all have a group anger. I'd answer that, Rumpus. So individuals have it. So it is kind of a collective of individuals, but at the same time, without there being a group who shared something.
How is it only kind of a collective? Why are you saying kind of?
Because it's both. Because it comes from its history. It comes from individuals and it comes from the group.
But isn't that true? Isn't that true with the collectives that are calling themselves collectives? It's always a group of individuals with a similar ideology.
I believe I can expand on that, Helena, if you let me.
Okay, go ahead. I want to thank you for sitting on your hands for so long. So we're going to give you the floor for a while.
When you have a simplistic, across the board, general nature of any event, and this is a general thing. And if it's not, please, Richard, correct me. Okay, I'm going to do my best just to make a hypothesis, and it might even roll across other hypotheses that I don't know of. But this is just something that I've contemplated for a long time. When you have a general event across the board in nature, it's not any kind of grand magical thing that a bunch of people will pick up on it naturally just by observing it. All right, that's the start. When you have a simplistic point of view going across the board, you're going to have people just think about the same things. Because I'm talking about Occam's razor. It boils down to Occam's razor. When you have a simplistic thing across the board, you're going to have a bunch of people thinking about the same thing because it's the simplest point of view. All right, that's your collective. It's no more complicated than that. I'm boiling right down to Occam's razor. And that's
there's a lot of bollocks being talked here. I'm wondering about change. It's a chaotic system. Sometimes one thing is going to cause a change, one person. Sometimes it's multiple things. It's the environment. So, yes, lots of things cause lots of changes in lots of different ways. Great. And Hermione, I don't know what she's on, really. She seems to be complaining about she wants change. I'm not quite sure what actual change she wants. And I'm back to this sign about we like our violence, domestic, whatever. I don't think you should be able to sue about that, but in this country, such a sign without being regarded as in very poor taste, and quite why American society has got policemen running around beating up their badly behaved, basically, policemen, which would not be tolerated for a moment in this country. Seems to be a sort of undeveloped society. It always amazes me that you have these extremes in America of the police behaving like some sort of tyrannical thing, and then you've got these wild SJWs on the left who are also completely bonkers, and you seem to have yet to develop into a civilized society. Yeah, anyway, so that's why.
You're talking about the Young America agenda, basically.
I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know if that matches any particular agendas exist, but it does amaze me that how underdeveloped American society seems to be in terms of the way the authority behaves, the way the people chained at this. I mean, I went to a lecture by one chap who was talking about the history of science, and he went through the 5 things he actually wanted to talk about in his discussion of science was feminism, Whiggism, and a variety of other political issues. I just thought, you're such a left plonker, just shut up, get on, talk about science, you dickhead. And there seems to be a contingent of sort of like a tell seeping through this academic left American bollocks, and
So
thinking, just get off.
Rumpy, I love you. Now look, I can fix your thoughts, right? Think of America.
Oh, sorry.
Think of America as the grand experiment, okay? We are the wild, nature, right? And you can impose your culture on us and see what happens, okay? And so then we're valuable in that way, all right?
So I did want to bring up a point because my name was mentioned, or sort of my name. It's actually Ermine. I'll try and pronounce yours right, the rumpus, and maybe you can do.
No, don't bother. Get it wrong. I'll be much happier about that.
Okay, well, I'd appreciate if you get mine. I'd appreciate if you get mine correctly. And again, Cube, I don't know that I've cut you off multiple times, but I'm just going to say my piece in hopes that I can say it. You asked a question that I thought was really compelling, the rumpus, which was what change I want, and that question hasn't been asked.
Indeed, you've been waffling on it, been deviating around it enormously, and it's frustrating to hear this waffle being dispensed without actually any objective being defined.
Hey, there's been plenty of waffles fucking whipping around this Waffle House today, let me tell you.
Yeah, I mean, let's just all agree.
Long story short.
Hey, I'm the moderator, right? Okay. I get to be the moderator here. So let's just all agree there's been waffling. And let's not even bother with whether or not Ermine explained herself. Let's just give her the floor. So Ermine, the floor is yours.
One of the places that I would like to start with your question was specifically, I think it would be fantastic if our cops would quit killing unarmed people. So definitely, that's a great place to start, and that is irrespective of race. It doesn't matter. Quit killing people that are unarmed. Quit bullying people to the extent, balance out what your job is from keeping people safe and yourself safe. I think it's important that cops go home safely as well. But there's a line that's crossed, and that would be a place to start. I think when you talk about schools and universities, and I don't know if you were here at the beginning, but I did state this, is if you've had a place that's ticked too far to one direction, yes, the pendulum needs to come back to the middle. And there's a multitude of places where that has happened. So if you want me to be specific on it, I can go.
Good.
Everything from sexism. I think that we live in a culture right now that has gone too far in a lot of places as it relates in the Western world on the feminism part.
Okay,
and
Hal,
are starting to
just
let me shut up and I will. God, as specifically as it relates to men, we are starting to emasculate them. I'm starting to see levels of college graduation where women, and especially Black women, are graduating at significantly higher rates than men and white men. The pendulum has gone too far.
Right.
That is specific, okay?
Good.
And when I talk about colleges and universities and the need for safe space, I don't think the need for safe space would be an issue if everyone would quit dropping the N-word like it's their freedom of speech. Fine, it could be your freedom of speech, but there will be a consequence for saying it. And one of the consequences might be, like I said earlier, you're going to get knocked the F word out, or people are going to start whining about a safe space from your using the N-word or any other disparaging word. So there's a consequence. If you want to use the N-word, go ahead. Then people are going to whine about free spaces. So which do you want? To quit using the N-word or to have free spaces?
I think you should quit using the word. But then again, it's embedded in rap culture and things, which I find appalling. Then
It is appalling.
If you're such an
Absolutely
SJW.
appalling.
Sorry?
It's absolutely appalling. Oh, sorry.
Was
Helen.
that, was
No,
that
it's okay.
Professor-
Jermaine said it's absolutely appalling, and I tried to make an off-color joke. We're going to let Gus go, and then we're going to let Rich fix
No,
it for us.
Rich held up his hand all nice, and I was just drawing.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Someone's talking to him.
No, I think we get. Sometimes we forget why things are the way they are, and I think that's a particularly poignant statement to make with a doctorate of history in the fucking room. The reason that the reason that black people use that word is because it belongs to them. It doesn't belong to us. We drag those people.
They can cracker,
Hey!
cracker all they want.
Hey!
Cube won't let anyone finish.
What the fuck?
Okay.
The reason that they feel that they're going to use the word is because we dragged them over here in chains 400 years ago. And there are systematic, built-in problems that have existed ever since, existed even supposedly after we released them from their chains, that are still keeping them down. Ermine talked about one. There are police forces in the United States that use black people for fucking target practice. These problems are real, okay? And calling people social justice warriors because maybe they're nibbling at the edge of the pie instead of eating it straight from the middle doesn't change the fact that there's still a lot of shit to be changed. And rather than poo-pooing the people who maybe aren't quite sure where they should start, maybe we should just concentrate, just let the change happen, instead of digging in our heels and saying, well, now all of a sudden I can't say nigger anymore. As if we ever had the right. Now I'm done.
All right. Is Nadia ready to come in?
Yeah, but I was hoping that maybe somebody who
The problem is that she can't get in because Rich still has her blocked. So
has she tried?
yeah, she's tried. And
All right.
Yeah,
so
there's only
no
9
idea.
people in here at present, so there's no.
Okay,
I was about to say I would happy to drop if that was the issue. There is
Okay.
only 9 people.
So here's what we're gonna do. We're
I'll
gonna
get in then.
let the academic here, the historian, the wonderful, incredible human being who is a genius in every way, abstract out what we all said as best as he can, and then he's gonna have to leave because Nadia, first come, first serve, etc. So Rich, the floor is yours, and we're gonna let you talk for as long as you want, and we'll have a back and forth a little bit, and then we'll bring Nadia back.
Okay. Firstly, Nadia, I'm sorry about this. I have unblocked everybody. As far as I know, you aren't blocked. I actually follow you, so who knows what's going on. Very, very strange. Google Plus, isn't it wonderful? There's so much there. Where do I begin?
I want you to
Change is
explain.
chaotic.
Personally, I want you to
Change is
explain.
chaotic.
Okay, change is
So
chaotic.
all this spending of time trying to identify a particular force of change, this sort of change, or that sort of change, or it's a group change or an individual change, you can't identify it. It's a chaotic system.
Well, okay, maybe that's true, but I would like for Rich, at least at some point, to explain to us what's different between the two forms of activism. Okay, the civil rights movement was supposedly individualistic. I don't see it that way.
It wasn't.
Yeah, it required a collectivist consciousness, etc., and all those words that are now SJW words and therefore prohibited from being spoken. I don't see how it doesn't reduce to that anyway, even though we don't have the words. I didn't have the words.
Yes, I mean, I'm not going to for one second. I mean, yeah, Rumpus is right. It is chaotic, but on the other hand, you can pick out the strands and look at them and go, "Oh, there's something that influences it, and there's something else that influences it, and there's something else." This is what I was trying to say earlier when I said you've got to think about all these other things, the environment, the blah blah blah, all this stuff, all pulls into the change. Now, coming to the activism, you're right. It wasn't an individual. I mean, we remember one great man, but partly because he got shot, and we tend to remember people who sacrificed, and also because he was a great man. Great men of history is a kind of history that does my teeth in, but we'll not get there. I do not think change happens without there being some kind of collective. I'm trying to think of a word that's not consciousness, but that'll do. To it, there has to be a meeting of minds in order for something big to change. I mean, we're talking about big political change here. I mean, there's smaller change as well, and there has to be a will, an intention, and a need. You know, some kind of cultural, environmental need for it to happen. So that all came about. I mean, there's the number of things. Again, it was just a civil rights movement. Why did the civil rights movement happen? Well, you've got the war, the end of the Second World War. You've got the change in economics in America. You've got and so on and so on and so on.
You don't have to have a meeting of minds, I don't think, Richard. You can easily get change without meeting of minds, and I'm not sure there was a meeting of minds in the civil rights. It's just they demanded something. They thought, oh bloody hell, better give in.
So how did this group choose to demand something? By being disparate and not agreeing with each other, because that's impossible. They came together and said, "This is what we want." Now, I'm not saying that it's always what's needed, but in this instance, that is absolutely.
Okay, you're talking about this instance in particular. Okay, I'm saying change in general doesn't necessarily come through meeting of minds.
Yeah, but I was asked a question about.
Sorry, okay, so I take that back. Sorry, Richard.
Sometimes these things are all chaotic and just happen, but there's usually all sorts of different reasons when you dig in, like I say. And now I think there's a group again that have a similar sort of thought process, a similar conscience. Now, I like the idea that has been expressed by Amin that it's swung far too far to the left and maybe needs to come back, but that's because I'm a diehard centrist. But you know, I think it is there, but things do swing far one way when change is about to happen. Things go too far. Things tend to go off the scale and then rebound back at some point. We'll see. I don't know what else to say, really. It's a very interesting subject, and I wish I had all night, but really neither of you ought to come back in because it's not fair. So, any questions? Anything I can directly answer?
Wait. She usually is in 2 or more hangouts at any given time. So she says she's okay with just staying in hers.
Okay.
Okay. So
but I'll just verify that. So just let me go again here.
Okay. So while you're verifying that, who feels like they just really want to speak? I'm wondering about Q. Are you feeling like you need to speak?
He's muted.
I've never been a type that thinks of myself wanting or not wanting to speak, but more of needing or not needing. And at this time, I don't feel the need to speak.
Okay then. Okay.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Anyone else besides me? Gus?
Well, did we want to actually touch on the precise nature of the backlash against what's perceived to be social justice movement, warrior, whatever, i.e. as personified by that nasty little fuck Milo Yiannopoulos?
I think that's a great idea. I would love to do that.
You know, I mean, as much as nobody wants to focus too much on one person, that dude typifies the backlash that's happening. In many ways.
Yeah, I agree. And he's a Christian, and he's gay, and he's anti-gay.
Whoa. Anti-feminist, not anti-gay.
No, he's anti-gay.
I'm going to need some citation on that.
Okay, the Joe Rogan interview is your citation.
I'll have to check that out.
He says, I wish I wasn't gay. I wish there were no gays. If I could take a pill and not be gay, I would take it immediately.
That's not anti-gay. That's like me wishing that I wasn't hetero because I think all women are just like evil. That
was
Helena, would you,
Yes.
Helena, would you please read the quote verbatim one more time?
Well, I didn't have a quote. I made that up out of my own butt.
Oh.
And what a nice butt it is.
Thanks for that.
Is he anti-gay or is he anti-gay culture, whatever that may be?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. To be fair to him, I think that the point that Cube raised is a good one, right? He's not necessarily anti-gay. I mean, he has said he wishes he wasn't gay. If he could take a pill, he would take it.
Well, so it's an affliction. So it's like having he can't one leg short than the other or something. So I'd like to have both legs working properly or something.
Yeah, right. But he also talks about the advantages to being gay, right? So he is kind of positioned exactly perfectly to exemplify what the heck is going on, whatever it is.
I think I might be able to address some of the issues here.
Okay.
Now understand, I'm not exactly a big Milo fan, but I appreciate that he articulates certain things well. If you look, once again, if you look at the root of what it is that he's saying, here are the complaints that I see coming from his part. One, this group of people that we refer to as social justice activists, social justice warriors, feminists, come across in two ways. One, the arguments that they make are unreasonable. Two, the behavior that is derived from those arguments is unreasonable and sometimes to excess. Two, if we look once again, and I've already I brought this up at the beginning, when I started to speak, what we are looking at here is a fundamental difference in cultural presupposition. Pulling yourself up by your bootstraps versus the empathy, caring sort of thing. We must never forget that everything a human being does is based on their values. Values are things that are so important that you cannot not act upon them. From values we derive beliefs. From beliefs we derive behavior. So his complaints, when you boil all the forgive the expression, all the jerking off and the self-promotion and the young cocky man attitude, if you reduce all of his arguments, it boils down to individuals taking personal responsibility for themselves and how what he perceives social justice warriors, feminists, these kind of people, taking it to an extreme of unreasonableness. And these are the two items that are the basis of his entire shtick. End.
And you could not say that any better. I could not word that any better.
Well, would you say that he leads by example? Given the Rogan interview, for example, covering for, I don't know, molestation of himself as a youngster, covering for I understand that part of his shtick, and he's smart politically, right? He says outlandish things. He creates an atmosphere very Trump-like in that the group that he's speaking in front of knows it's going to be a circus and a party, and he doesn't mind that and that kind of thing. That's kind of a new aspect to it. But, does he live what he says?
Well, my question and response would be a very simple one. Are we talking about the ideas that we're putting that he's putting forth, or are we gossiping about the man?
Well, I'm saying that you are saying that at root, regardless of the shtick, right? At root, he's talking about personal responsibility.
Yes.
My question is, does he live like that? Is he really an exemplary figure to put forth as someone who believes in or has one of his values being personal responsibility.
Self-assessment is the root of
Sorry, I
his,
was muted.
You go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know where I got muted. My question is, my first question is, are we talking about the ideas or are we gossiping about the man? And the second question in response to what I think was actually heard was, do you think that's important that he behave in a certain way, and why?
So I think...
Is it about the person or the ideas?
So if you are saying that everybody cares most about their values, and you are saying that Milo is perhaps the perfect exemplification of someone who values... Okay, an example?
I said he promoted. I said he promoted those ideas. I didn't say he was a perfect example of.
Okay, so so you're saying he promotes those ideas? Yeah. Okay, then yeah, I think I would agree that he is doing his populace best, his pop culture best to promote those ideas. I think I agree with that. Does anyone disagree?
I would say civic duty, but okay.
It's quite commendable if this guy is actually attacked. Because I dislike identity politics so much, where people are constantly promoting the advantages of their own position. It's quite wonderful in some ways to see someone who's actually advocating making their own position less advantageous. It's refreshing from that point of view, because I believe that you should have just general rules, and that identity politics should be shunned at every opportunity. So in some ways, to see this inverse identity politics, which is what this guy seems to be doing from what the information I'm gathering, and from the very few times I've seen him in action, that is quite refreshing. But the trouble is, he seems to mix that with some obnoxious attitudes as well. But there we go.
What I find most appealing about him is his level of impartialness.
That is really surprising. You find him impartial?
Yes.
Okay, tell us, explain that a little bit.
I'm talking about the simplicity. Simplicity. I don't know how to define that any more simple. He thinks about everything in a general point of view, and he does not. It's impossible, at least from what I can see. I don't see how he's targeting anyone as a favor or disfavor. If he is, please give me an example.
I don't particularly care if he favors one or another or a third or a fourth. The guy's an abrasive asshole to everybody. Yay! At least he's an abrasive asshole to everybody. Where I come from, that's called damnation by faint praise.
Answer me this. Answer me this.
I totally agree with you. He's certainly okay. Go ahead, Q.
Answer me this. How can somebody not be an abrasive asshole without favoritism? Or with favoritism.
I apologize, Kaiser Q, but your question as rendered to me is incoherent.
If someone does not, if someone isn't strung up by a certain demographic, how are they going to be liked by anyone?
That has to be some of the most specious logic I've ever heard of in my life.
What's specious? I don't know.
Who hated Mother Teresa?
Everybody that just didn't believe that freaking 35mm camera with a highlight was actually real. Hey, it was a fucking camera. But it was a camera aberration.
Did I have a fucking stroke? Who hated Mother Teresa?
Well,
Richard Dawkins hated Mother Teresa.
Actually, no, it was
Hitchens.
Oh,
Hitchens.
Hitchens, sorry.
Hitchens.
Oh,
Oh, we gotta seriously talk about Mother Teresa. Are you going that route?
You
Are you
asked
really
me,
gonna go
you
that
asked
route?
me who in the
Let's bring
world.
it back.
Listen, you asked me a question. You asked me who in the world can truly advocate a position without being hated by somebody, and I just gave you a name of someone who could be who advocated a position and wasn't and you know, I mean, yeah, Christopher Hitchens did write a
That's
nasty
not
book on
what
him,
I-
but
that's
it
not what
was
I
pretty late
asked.
in the game.
That's not what I asked. I asked.
Yeah, actually, that is what you asked.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
This is
that
what
is
I
what
asked.
you asked.
I asked who can be completely general on the entire board without stringing themselves to anyone and being hated by everyone, or
Yeah, you just
or not liked by one party.
Okay, so I'm not so sure that who could be hated or not hated. Let's move on. I think
May
both
I
of those are
attempt to make
valuable,
a
but
clarification of this gentleman's?
I'm talking about no strings attached. I'm
okay, so
talking
we're
about
gonna let
situation.
Francis make his clarification. Then James has been asking to speak, and then I want Rich again. So Francis first, then James, then Rich.
Just a brief question. I want to clarify. Is what you're trying to say is anyone who takes a strong position will inevitably incur opposition? Is this the point you're trying to make?
Talking to me?
Yes, I think.
Okay, I'm saying that Milo does not have a favored position, and if you have a completely neutral position, you're not gonna be favored by anyone. You're gonna be an asshole to everyone. It doesn't
In
matter.
other words, he's taking a strong position, therefore he encounters opposition. Is this what you're trying to say?
On a universal scale, and there's no one to be an exception. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, then that sounds like a no duh.
Yeah, it's kind of a no duh. But James, go ahead and introduce what you wanted to say.
Well, it's probably something that you and I can talk about with our Silverman thing. I think the point that we're just talking about, that the whole firebrand thing, there has to be an aspect of ruffling feathers. And I think that's kind of interesting that we've segued all the way around onto that. And I mean, I think the topic that the paper that you brought up for the Silverman discussion, I think that fits right in with this, actually, in many ways. But that's a tangent we can talk about later.
Yeah, so when we talk about Silverman, we'll bring that in. At some point I intend to, because it really is a very good critique of social identity politics and collectivism as it relates to new atheism.
Yeah,
But so I do definitely want to slate that. Someday we'll talk about that.
Yep.
Rich, I wanted you to talk next.
Okay. Don't know much about Milo. Yeah, I know the political. I can't say his surname. I'm not even going to try. Too many teeth in my mouth. But I don't know much about Milo. I find him. I'm just quickly reading about it. There's a couple of things I find about his reported history as being interesting. That it claims a guy who basically dropped out at the University of Manchester could then get a place in Cambridge. Bullshit. But anyway, that aside, interesting the idea of a firebrand. Firebrands play an important role in society. I'm not going to go historically, but I think they do play an important role. And it comes back to this idea of things going too far one way. It's the firebrands who do that. And without the issues being thrown out there by the firebrands, with all their ferocity and anger, even if it is a pushback against something like the modern identity politics, which itself is I think a firebrand movement. Firebrands beget firebrands. You know what I mean? So
absolutely. But the Overton window.
Exactly.
Can I scream? The Overton window. It's important.
Will it move? So with these, I think there's an important role for people like that. Now, hopefully, what will happen is what usually happens, and these firebrands will swing back, and everything will centralise and calm down in possibly a new Overton window or the old one. Who knows? Sometimes it doesn't happen quite like that, and we get our psychopathic dictators and the whatnot. But usually, when the wash comes, things swing somewhere windowy. And that's an academic technical term, by the way. Use it
Are
all the time.
are you dancing around Franz Ferdinand or what?
No. What? No, he's.
I don't think they've released a record in years. Anyway, so I thought all the thunder was taking my others. Anyway, so yeah, you know what I mean. It's interesting. Milo serves a purpose. I find him to be a curious person. I certainly don't find him to be without opinion, or any of that. But yeah, he's not someone I have any expertise in, so I'm not going to comment too much. I just use him as a model firebrand.
Yeah, I think he is a good firebrand for the opposite of the SJW, if there is such a thing. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know. I don't know where you're coming from, Cube, with your he's neutral.
Helen, I'll be straight honest, straightforward with you. I love anybody that likes to start shit in media. I just love it. I don't have any way to sugarcoat it.
But
so
not
you're
anybody
absolutely in love with Sarkeesian then, right? You just would love to just blast her word everywhere.
It's the kind of shit that he wants to be fire started, nothing else. If someone starts shit in the media, cool, as long as it's his perspective. Got it. Noted.
Milo doesn't have a perspective.
What are you talking about?
Well, how can he
Have you actually
all his
watched?
ideas if he's neutral and has no perspective? I don't really. I mean, I admit I know jack about this guy.
Of course he has a perspective. Look.
But what Cube is saying is not making any sense to me. It's like he's a firebrand. Well, not that Cube actually said he was a firebrand. But he's a firebrand. He's very outspoken. He's very brash. He's very abrupt. He has opinions. He's putting forth stuff. So how can he be neutral? And the other things, Cube, this puzzling me.
Yeah,
but
Cube.
It's a slight distraction from the actual
Cube.
general conversation. So
there's nothing neutral about Milo, Cube. Come on. I mean, all I want to say is, come on.
He cares only about the things that really matter, and everything else just gets shoved aside.
To him, that matter to him.
Oh my lord.
I get the impression what he really cares about is his hair.
Oh, listen, don't mess with his hair.
If he does, you'd think he'd comb it once in a fucking while.
That's why I put him in my logic review.
Haven't you ever seen the what's that Les Grossman version of the Dude from Twilight? Have you guys ever seen that YouTube? Never mind.
All right, so this reminds me of my turd theory, right? My my turd theory of social movements. I think it's pretty damn valid.
Social movements, turd theory. What is this?
I was trying that not to go through my mind, Gus, but you had to.
What is going on here?
You get the firebrands. I'll tell you my turd theory. My turd theory came from me analyzing people saying, "Hey, you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater," and my contention is that no, what we do as humans, as societies, is we do throw out the baby, but we keep the bathwater because it's the turds that the baby made that actually last, right? So you get any firebrand on any side. They make some crazy statement, it changes the Overton window, and then little bits, little pieces of whatever it was that they were saying get embedded into the society, and that's what really causes the change. So I am all for throwing out the baby and sifting through the turds that are left in the bathwater. I think that's what actually happens.
I think there is something this pendulum theory. I mean, there are a number of occasions when we see, for instance, in history, where civil war in Britain, for instance, we go from a royalist position to an authoritarian democracy, and then vice versa. And similarly, with feminism, we had people like Germaine Greer shouting and screaming in the 60s and 70s. And I saw some amazing footage, I think it was in the UK or in America, where these feminists would demand that the only news reporters that were allowed to take pictures of their march were women. They insisted on there being women for cameras. They weren't, they were going to throw about sort of universal non-discrimination. No, we want discrimination for us because we've been subjected to it. And you get these sort of pendulums, and I suppose ultimately eventually they sort of come back into the middle where the sort of, as you were saying about, there is a sort of agreement then, and there's a sort of in the impetus and the momentum of change, it sort of goes with the people who initiated it, and the people who are subjected to it sort of retire sort of gracefully, and then eventually they get a bit more confidence and then fight back again, and then you end up with a more middling position.
Oh, that's why I said
that's why
let
us
them run
middle-aged
rampant.
people.
Let them run rampant. Let them run wild. Let them destroy themselves. That's my philosophy.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with that. I mean, that's what's going to happen anyway, right? It just one thing it means is that middle-aged people like me are becoming more and more irrelevant, right? All I can do is stand on the sidelines and point at the millennials and the youth, right? So we don't want to say to these youths, you can't make that lawsuit, and then claim to be liberal in saying it. To me, the regressives are the ones that are fighting against these bizarro third wave freakish ideas. I mean, I'm just like, get over it. This is what it is. I mean, you can, formulate your reactions, and that's what you are designed to do. But now you are the regressive. It's not correct. It is incorrect to call the young people regressive. That is just factually not what's happening. You are the regressive one by demanding that they don't make outlandish lawsuits.
Yeah, but they're doing things like deplatforming people. Like Richard Dawkins was banned from speaking at various academic institutions. There's a whole range
Again, there is a repercussion for what you say and do. There is nothing. If at the end of the day, if the student body overwhelmingly votes and says, we do not want you here because of where you stand, then that's the student body and the university's decision. You can say what you want, but you will not get paid to come speak at a university if it is super conservative or super liberal and you stand on the wrong side of their student body and leadership views. What is wrong with that?
It's intolerance.
Herman,
it is a consequence.
It's consequence of their intolerance.
Francis just sat here and said there is individual responsibility. Your words have power. Your ideas have power. And if people don't want you there because of your words and ideas, too bad. Those are your consequences.
It's a horrible reflection on the intolerance and refusal to accept other points of view. That's what it shows.
Herman,
Rumpy, you sound like an old man.
You do.
Herman, you realize you just
Hermine.
Hermine, you realize
it is the consequence. What is the problem with that? There are consequences for your actions.
It's a consequence of their intolerance. That's what's a consequence, not their behavior. It's a consequence of their intolerance.
No, the consequence is you going out. If you, I'm going to tell you right now, if you make disparaging remarks against LGBT, transsexuals, whatever you want to call it, and then want to come in my house for dinner, guess what? You're not welcome here. And that is your consequence.
Hermine, you're vindicating him, not the other way around, and you don't even realize it.
Oh, I somehow doubt
that. Universities and academic institutions are supposed to be debating where ideas come together, not where they're banned.
Yeah, that's how they used to be.
Exactly.
But now it bankrupts you to go to university. So if you're a kid and you know that your parents are risking poverty and second mortgaging their house and things for you to get in there, you feel empowered like previous university students didn't. And it's just the reality of the way American society is changing. It's one of the variables that is changing.
After the next person who wanted to speak, I'd like to actually directly address what Elena just said.
So go ahead, Gus. I think it's okay.
No. Somebody wanted to address something.
Address something. On the issue of no platforming, first of all, we must understand that a university, as long as it's funded by the state, by the government, that means indirectly by the public. It is to that degree, it is a public space.
It's not
They
funded
are
by the
also
public.
run by student.
It is funded by the
It is
public.
in the
No,
UK.
private universities are
Please-
not funded
Please,
by the public.
Yeah,
everybody,
we're not talking about them.
Everyone, let us allow the speakers to speak instead of speaking over each other. That way we can keep the conversation on track. So my point is that a university is at least partially funded by the public. The second is that whether somebody is allowed to speak in a space on that is determined by the university, by the student groups. The problem is that the student groups are not homogenous. And there are people who have been invited where the setups have been made, the space has been done, and retroactively this invitation has been removed, and retroactively all these plans that were set up were denied. Now, if nobody invites this person, let's I'm just going to randomly pick someone. Joe Blow, okay? Joe Blow wants to speak. If nobody invites this person, this is not no platforming. No platforming is when somebody has been invited or has been preemptively declared to be persona non grata, and you may not. Even if there are those amongst the membership of the people who do want to hear that person speak. Sorry, I just lost my verbal train of thought here. Even if there are some who want to invite, and there are those who go, no, your invitation doesn't count because our word is stronger. That's the no platforming thing that I object to.
Yeah, but that no platforming has been going on for centuries and centuries. But it's just that the people who were in power were different.
Yep.
Go ahead, Francis.
I thought Gus was going to say something.
The second thing that I object to is that that people are making an effort to not listen to crazy ideas. Seems to me that the crazier the idea, the more you want to pay attention. I think we should be listening to the KKK. I think that we should be listening to terrorists. I think that we should be listening to people who encourage and advocate for genocide. Because this way, at least we know what they're thinking, we know what their plans are, we know what their arguments are, so that we can think about them, and if not agree with them, then prepare good counter arguments. I'm done.
Okay, so we're going to do Gus, and then we're going to do Rich, and then we're going to do Fabio, and then we will sort of absorb what everybody said. So go ahead, Gus.
Helena, you talked about if your parents are sending you to a university and they're bankrupting themselves. You've obliquely brought up a very good point. One of the problems with university is that it has changed to a point where it's a business selling you a product and treating you like a consumer.
Yeah.
When higher end places of academe did that, they engendered a notionality within their students and within the people who engage in their services of the customer, not the student, but the customer. And the customer has an entirely different set of expectations as to what they're getting for their money than the student or the candidate does. And I think when we did that, it's kind of funny because it was the right wing that urged universities to start becoming more, do public-private partnerships, open up more, increase the tuitions, that sort of thing, and make it more exclusive. Well, surprise, surprise, surprise. Now all of a sudden universities are acting like businesses and people are acting like customers. And when you're acting like a customer, I'm sorry. If I'm standing in a lineup at a McDonald's waiting for my McSlop, I don't want somebody from the KKK to come up and tell me that, guess what's wrong with your cultural genetic heritage, and guess what I would do with you on a burning cross if I had my chance. And the fact of the matter is that if people are paying that kind of money for a kick-ass education, they have the right not to feel scared and physically afraid. Now, do they have the right not to be challenged mentally? Obviously not. But that challenge, I've grown up beside people who went to university and had professors, essentially challenge them in a way that would be considered abusive these days because they thought that was how you were supposed to do it. I think when you put things on the table, you have to put everything on the table. Universities ain't like they used to be. They're changing, and as long as we're going to treat them as a market rather than a true clearinghouse of ideas, this is the kind of thing we're going to bump into. I'm done.
Okay, so Rich has to leave. We're going to let Rich have his last word, and feel free to talk on anything. You don't have to stick to the American universities or anything like that. And then after you go, we'll all get back to wherever it was we were squabbling.
It's an interesting thing. The whole no platforming thing is curious to me, because on one hand, yes, I mean in the UK now, people also pay for their tuition in universities, so they are kind of private. And I do get the argument when I say to people, "We haven't done you a reader pack. You're going to have to go out and get the books." But I've paid £8,000 for this. How dare you? I want you to provide the books. In the UK, I get the opportunity to say to them, actually, no, you haven't paid £8,000. You've borrowed £8,000 from the taxpayer, me, and if you work really, really hard, you'll pay me back. But that's a whole other thing. But I think there are two different things here. There is, on one hand, the ability for someone to have a platform and speak, if you like, to the choir, who can come to a university and can dole out hate speech without any challenge, without any regress. That is what is frightening of it happening. On the other hand, there are debates. Now, I think when there is a debate, it's good to hear all views. I think about, I don't know if you know this, but there's the BNP, the British Nationalist Party, had their leader on the Question Time, and there were lots of people who went nuts about that. They were picketing outside. You shouldn't have him on the television. And what happened is he went on, sat in a room on live television, watched by a few million people, surrounded by professional politicians, and got torn to pieces. He looked like an idiot. From that moment onwards, the BNP, he got kicked out. The BNP are now bankrupt, and I'm sure it was that moment that led to it. So I'm a big advocate for stick him in a room with smarter people and let's see how long they last. However, I can see no platforming when it is the case of somebody wanting to just come and spew bile for the sake of spewing bile with no challenge. Now, I don't know how often that happens at university. Sure, there are people in the audience who are going to challenge them, but I have come across people who have made speeches that have just been idiotic and horrible and then walked off before any questions. So I think it's trickier than just saying people come and people go. There are all sorts of different ways you can interact with the university. That's basically my thoughts of it. And again, firebrands. Where do they get to stand and speak if we tell them all to shut up? I don't know. Anyway,
that makes me uneasy. That does make me uneasy.
Yeah, that's me. I'm going to have to disappear now because I have a hungry wife. So I should, yes. So I shall make some fajitas and we can be fed and lovely and happy.
Richard,
thank you
so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Richard.
That's okay. It's been lovely to speak to you all. Very mostly nice and polite and
Thanks, Richard. It was really good to meet you.
Yeah, that as well. So I shall see you all another time, I hope. See you guys later. Where's me button? Bye.
All right, Fabio, you're on the hot seat because I remember a hangout where you were promoting no platforming against fascists in Italy, and perhaps your reasoning is something that the SJW irresponsible, stupid millennials are adapting. So maybe you could at least start by explaining what it is about no platforming that you do advocate for, and what you don't mean when you do advocate for no platforming.
Okay, I mean, first of all, that's fantastic because I come in last. I haven't seen the whole hangout. I'll be one of the last to speak, so I will, by definition, I will be right. So that's my perfect spot. Before answering your question, just let me point out one very small thing, and then I will get back to you, Elena, because I know you're interested into that, and we've been talking about that. I don't think that people like Milo's in UK are the problem. We have those people all around the world. There is this Milo guy in the UK. We have Trump in the US. We have a guy named Salvini in Italy. There is another guy called Mikalo. Oh shit. Mikaloliakis in Greece, which is the leader of Golden Dawn, in case you're wondering. I mean, those are the point of the spear, the tip of the iceberg. Those are the people which is really easy to point out. But my opinion is that those are not the problem. The problem are the average people which identifies with them. The people which they find a good, something, nice and cozy to lean on their, borderline racist and xenophobic ideas. So yeah, I mean, it's good to talk about those people, but I don't think those are the real problem. They wouldn't have no platform. I mean, literally, and this is a good segue to what I'm talking about after that. If it weren't for those people. As for the no platform rule that we talked about, Elena, well, first of all, let me say that there is a lot of confusion. I always hear people, especially from the US, saying that, oh, I mean, in some countries in Europe, you have no freedom of speech because you cannot speak about, Nazi party or fascist party. That's false. That's completely stupid and idiotic, and everybody who says that should be labeled as, stupid. There are no such laws. I mean, fascism and Nazism are taught in school. They are in textbooks. I can literally grab you a textbook, for children up to 16-year-old, where it is explained how fascism get into the way. What is not allowed to be done, and this falls under the same umbrella that every country has, which is the umbrella of hate speech. There are some countries in which it is not allowed to glorify Nazi or fascist party. It is not allowed to say, to deny the Holocaust. It is not allowed to spread the same ideas that Nazi party and fascist party had. And this goes straight to my point that, I got one time with Helena, it seems to be, it was such a big deal, but I understand it is a big deal. It is my opinion that, well, first of all, those are laws of legitimate states. And the reasons those laws are put in place is that because we know how those kind of regimes get into power. It wasn't a coup d'etat. They were democratically elected, both in Germany, in Spain, and in Italy. So there were no people marching on the Capitol and taking the power. They exploited the system. And in my opinion, the same system, once you got the disease, you got to develop antibodies to say, okay, I've got this disease, I'm developing antibodies. And it might be painful because it requires, an injection or some rash. But, the alternative is to see your whole body die. So, you know what? Fuck it. I'll go for, the less of evil, which is those antibodies. The second thing that, that I said is that my personal opinion is that I will never allow a Nazi to speak in a public speech. And my reasoning is not because he is a Nazi of his ideas. My reasoning is quite simple. If he had his way, I mean, if what he proposed was put in place, I will not be allowed to speak. Okay? So my rationale behind telling the guy, you know what, you shouldn't be allowed to speak, it's actually, if you want to see, it's actually being really, graceful to the guy. It's me telling him, you know what, well, I agree on your point, and because of if you had your way, I wouldn't be allowed to speak. You're not being allowed to speak. Let's see how it works out and see if it makes you feel any better.
it's very interesting with Europe having the history that it has, and me as a stupid American not having lived that.
Ella,
No?
can I have first dibs, please?
Yeah, you can have first dibs. I just want to say something really scares me and bothers me about abstracting out what you're saying about Nazism.
Okay, look,
Yeah, go ahead.
I really need to talk about this.
Second dibs, please.
All right. First, I want to give you respect, Fabio, in all of your point of views. I respect all of your point of views. I really do. It's the bottom of my heart. You went through so much material that I'm guarantee you I'm not going to be able to cover it all. I'm just going to cover what I can and give it to Francis. Well, I don't know who it was who had second dibs, but I'm going to cover what I can. First, I can clearly tell that the way government works. What country are you in, Fabio?
I live in Italy.
All right. I can clearly tell that the way your government works is clearly different than the U.S. just by the way that you're describing the flow of things. And there's nothing wrong or right. And I'm not trying to make a wrong or right. I'm just talking about just the semantics of it. That's okay. Wow, you went through so much stuff that you really went in deep to the point where I really can't even. I wanted to touch up on some of it. You went so deep that I really can't even. I wish you would have focused on a particular thing. It would have been much easier. Man,
Maybe while you collect your thoughts, Francis can talk, because Francis has mentioned a couple of things here in the side chat.
Yeah, excellent point. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Francis. I'm going to mute myself.
Hi, Fabio. Nice to talk to you again.
Hey, friends.
I think I have an objection to the argument that you just made. I'll never let a Nazi talk because the way that they got in was by gaming the system. What I hear when I say you saying this is a flat-out appeal to consequences. We shouldn't do this because what could happen, and this goes back to the beginning of our conversation as well with jokes and this and that. An appeal to consequences is a fallacy unless we can make direct cause and effects. I am afraid of what might be is not a good reason to disallow certain kind of speech.
Well, except that we know now what allowing that kind of speech led to, and we've had numerous examples since then as to what it led to. I mean, sometimes for the greater good, governments have to speculate. You know, and we know for a fact that sometimes the nastiest things in the world begin with just a little bit of talk. How the Nazi Party
shall
got
we
started.
reverse that to the other side?
Well, I mean, governments aren't in the business of going from one extreme to the other, and neither should we be. But I think by the same token, there are definite signs when talk is the kind of talk that becomes more than talk, and I don't think that we should ignore that because we're concerned that maybe one time in 10 or whatever, a bunch of people can't meet and goose step around a corner, even though that's really what they're just part of a goose stepping society. They're not really fascist. They just want to walk with their legs in the air.
Well, yeah, and also, I mean, let me try to reply. I hope really briefly, and please, Guy, tell me to shut up because I tend to ramble. I understand what you said, Francis, but I disagree. It is not that I will not let them talk because of what might happen. On the contrary, there are two reasons, as I told you, why I will not let them speak. One is the one I told you before, is because I take people seriously. And I presume that they are consistent. So the fact that someone which professes himself to be a Nazi or a fascist wants to talk and wants to profess and keep on with that kind of ideology, I already know where that ideology goes to. So I don't need him to talk in order for me to understand where that it will lead eventually to me not be able to do what he wants to do. So I'm just taking the guy as being consistent and say, you know what? You want to put in place a system which eventually will not allow me to talk. Okay, let's start with you right now. You're not allowed to talk. Let's see if it suits you and if you think it's a good idea. Eventually, you might change idea. So it's not my problem. It's their problem. That's the first thing. The second thing...
If I may, Fabio?
No,
Sorry,
I think it's really
continue.
important, but if you really want to go, please go. But my second point was really important because there is an important distinction in there.
Please
So if I just
continue with
may...
your second point, I'll address it later.
Yeah, it will be just a minute. The only ideologies which are forbidden, I know for a fact in Italy it's fascism and in Germany it's Nazism. I think in France there's something like that, but I'm not sure about that. There are only those ideologies. In the Republican Italy, we had a party called MSI, Movimento Sociale Italiano, whose ideology was really, really, really close to the fascist party. I mean, really close. In some ways, it was borderline impossible to distinguish. But here's the catch. They never claimed to be fascist. And those were a legitimate party with a representation in the parliament. They had people elected, and nobody will tell them they should shut up. So this is the main, and I know it might sound asinine, but there is a very important distinction. You're either a fascist or you're almost a fascist. If you're almost a fascist, you can talk. If you're a fascist and you recognize yourself, or a Nazi, and you recognize yourself in this ideology, I know already where this ideology has gone to. I mean, people like me, everybody in Italy, I'm 50, they have lost parents. They have had grandparents going to Greece and in Russia. They had grandmothers eating cats because they had nothing to eat. They heard stories of people killing pregnant women with the baby in the belly, or taking infants and being thrown up in the air and being shot at like targets, like clay pigeons, but they were infants. So we know. I mean, you know that T-shirt. Been there, done that. Yeah, I've been there, done that. If you're almost fascist, okay, yeah, we can discuss. But you're a fascist, I know where it's going to, and yeah, I'll give you a little bit of your medicine. I'm sorry, I rambled a lot.
No, that's okay, Fabio.
Yeah, it's great, Fabio.
If I may, I'll if I can remember, I'll approach the 2 points in order. The first point is, I'm afraid of what you might do because of what others have done historically. Therefore, I shall do unto you before you do unto us. That's what I'm hearing. Do you think that's far off from what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't want to. I'm probably nitpicking, and I don't know if I'm confused. But I think my point is subtly different. It's not that I'm afraid of what you're going to do. I know what you're going to do. What I'm afraid, well, it's not that I'm afraid. What I'm certain is that I think that people should be serious and consistent. So if you proclaim that ideology, I know already where that ideology goes. I've known that. I know.
I have a number of issues with that. I'll just list them off and then move on to your second point.
Okay.
You or others can address it as you will. Oh shoot! And now my mind has just gone blank. I hate it when that happens. First of all, one, you're saying that certain ideas, there's a difference between fascist and almost fascist. Seems to me that we would want to be really precise on what that idea is.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is assuming that people are consistent. My experience in life is that they are not. I've changed my mind so many times in my life that I look back at my previous self and wonder, what was I thinking? The third part is, no, you cannot know. You might have a reasonable estimation of what could occur, but your sense of moral certainty cannot be reflected in the real world. On to your second point, which was there is a distinction. There's a distinction between the two, and it's a subtle distinction. Well, what exactly is that distinction? And do you not believe that the best way to counteract that one very potent idea is to have it expressed publicly in so many different ways so that those who care about society flourishing have the opportunity to respond and counter-argue and essentially take responsibility for doing their citizenly part in keeping the public discourse rational to the best that we can. I'm finished.
Okay. I was writing down. I think I made a mess about your first point. I just wrote certain ideas are dangerous. So I think I might want to. Do you remember exactly what your first point was? I just realized I wrote a mess out of it, so I don't want to address your point. Very bad.
I'm sorry. I'm just kind of going with the flow right now, and I was relying on short-term memory too. I think the original point was that I know what you're going to, because of history, I accept that this history is a perfect precursor of what your behavior will be. Mm-hmm. Knowing this for a moral certainty, I shall prevent you from doing this. I shall do unto you before you do unto us.
That's you, not me.
Okay, yeah, I think I remember. I got the gist of it. Okay, so I just read what I wrote. So please correct me if I totally made a mess out of what you said. But let's see. I mean, we're nothing to gain here. We're just talking. So, yeah. You said at the beginning, well, certain ideas are dangerous, and I think you referred to the fact that that might not be true, and that ideas change, which leads to the second point you made. Yeah, you're right. The fact is, I was extremely careful, and if I didn't, I'm sorry, to make a distinction between ideas and ideologies. Now, ideas might change, but ideologies are ideologies. You cannot call yourself a communist if you don't adhere to the communist ideology. You cannot call yourself a Nazi if you don't adhere to the Nazi ideology. Now, you can call yourself an Italian social movement party affiliate, and that might be really close to being a fascist, but it's not a fascist. And that's why those people were allowed and were elected in the parliament. I know it's really subtle. You said, and again, I think that goes back to the second point. You said, that I assume that people are consistent. Yeah, I mean, well, I think that people are consistent, at least in the reasoning. I mean, if you're having a conversation with me and you right now, I would assume that at least, for the time being that we're having this conversation, you might want to be consistent. Or at least you might want to say, you know what, I'm sorry about that, I changed my mind. There must be, some demarcation when we're talking about, Again, keep in mind that I'm perfectly fine with people not being consistent and changing their mind. But what I'm talking about is ideologies. Ideologies are consistent. The moment you change one ideology, you change the name of the ideology. So if you have socialists, they change a little bit the ideology, they became social democrats. You got communists, which turned into socialists, and then social democrats. And
I think I understand what you're saying.
yeah. So and the third point is that I basically, in a nutshell, well, I cannot claim that people are consistent, and I agree with you. I cannot claim that people are consistent, but see what I said before. I'm not. I know I said that in a I don't want those people to talk because I presume that people are consistent. What I really meant to say is that I presume that the ideology that they're sprouting is consistent to what they're saying. So I see what you're doing there, and you're right. What I really mean is that I don't want that kind of ideology to be spread out, because that ideology will lead me not to speak. If you're a proponent of that ideology in that moment, to me, you are the ideology, and crap. It doesn't. I don't want to talk. I don't want you to talk for the reason.
Which of the two? And which of the two do you believe is more effective? Denying people the ability to speak it so that others can hear it and rebut it, or simply denying it publicly so that it may spread underground?
I think that leads
is most effective at supplanting it.
I think that leads to the final point that you made. That you basically ask, what is the distinction between a Nazi and semi-Nazi, and fascist and semi-fascist, and that's a really interesting point. And again, it might seem trivial. It might seem, and it probably is. But the distinction is there to be seen. There are manifests of the Nazi Party, and there is a manifest of the Fascist Party. And there it says, black on white, what is the ideology, what are the tools in order to implement the ideology, what has to be done in order for that ideology to be took into action. So it's not really up to me to distinguish that. I mean, I can read the manifesto, and but again, okay, that might seem silly, and I understand that. But let's say, for example, that you come up now and say, well, I am a fascist, and I don't want to speak. I don't really have to ask you, okay, are you really a fascist? Do you really follow all the exact programs of the fascist party? Do you really think that autarky is a really good thing, and autarky has got to be reached, by purging all, the what you call inferior races? Do you really think that the best way, in order for you to run a country is that, to get rid of all the mental instability, people and stuff? It's not me which have to ask you that. The moment that you claim yourself to be a fascist, to me, it's automatic that you adhere to that movement. And I know what's written in that movement. It's there, You wrote that.
What of those who do not know?
Sorry?
And what of those who do not know, who have never heard it? Should they be denied the opportunity to hear this?
Well, Francis, to be fair, that might sound shallow, but I don't really care. I mean, if you were to come to my house, okay, and tell me, you know what, I'm going to bash, the head of your kids. I don't need you to listen to the following line saying, well, I'm going to bash the head of your kids, and then I will give all the surviving members $50 million. To me, the problem ends at the first sentence. I'm going to bash the head of your kids. Oh, fuck you. So I don't really care if you say, well, I'm fascist, but I'm gay, or whatever. I'm just saying shit. But I promise you'll be the most powerful nation in the world. I don't care.
Okay.
All right. We're having a bit of a side discussion here. I don't know if you guys are done, but I want to reference something that's happening in the side discussion.
Yeah, I think he and I have kind of worked out as far as Fabio and I have worked out as far as we're going to go. So we can do that if you like.
Okay, I really appreciate it. Helena, is that okay?
Of course, yeah. Go ahead.
So it seems that I made a statement in the side discussion, and it was in reference to a point of view that responsibility, a progressive or regressive left, I think it's progressive left, being a group responsibility and taking away responsibility from an individual. I'm going to start by just giving you just a quick background on my life. I think I'm the luckiest or most blessed person in the world. My dad was in the Peace Corps. He's a white guy, and married my mom. Had us and married my mom, whatever. And I got the fortunate opportunity to come here as a young age, and was very blessed along the way. I decided to make a couple stupid decisions early in my life and got knocked up, I think technically at 17 and like 11 months, and ended up becoming a single parent because I didn't want to compound the issue and just didn't believe in, while I believe in choice, I didn't want to make a choice, that choice, and decided to raise my kid. That said, I've taken personal responsibility for everything in my life along the way, was able to pull myself up from my bootstraps, as Francis has said it, and have created a great life. I am paying out the wazoo right now for my kid to go to college. So I appreciate the fact that it's almost $70,000 a year, and I'm crying as I'm eating ramen and my kid is having a great education. But those are the choices that I've made, and that's what's most important for my family. So I'm sorry that I called Cube an idiot or stupid on the side, because he inferred something about me, which, not knowing me, he said specifically that, and I will quote, because the very idea of some black person thinking all white people are privileged is a fantasy world. Now, if you understand a little bit about me, I don't think you would ever bring up that quote, because it's not something that I would ever say or even infer. I come from a family or an environment that is as mixed as can be. And I understand the challenges, that to the degree that I can, of black people, also to the degree that I can of a white male, just from what I've experienced in my family and going through that process. So if you are to think that anything that I've said would lead a reference of me feeling like it's black against white, I have one thing for you, and that's F you. Okay, and on the hardest and coarest of levels. And I'm sorry that I called you a name, but I'm personally pissed because I think you've made a supposition that I'm going to, I think is the heart of the matter, that it's an elephant in the room that nobody wants to address or bring up. And it's crystal clear, in my opinion, that we are making, that we have our own biases, and that we're making suppositions or whatever, we're predetermining what people will respond to and how they should act based on things as irrelevant as their color. So, Cube, I really want to know what where you're coming from with this, and I will turn it over to you, because I'm not very happy with what I've heard from you so far.
Is everyone ready for this? Is everyone really ready for this?
Go ahead and make your point, Keith.
As long as it's courteous and rational, absolutely.
I have a hereditary disorder. Some of you may or may not know what it is. It's called Tourette's syndrome. Anybody here does anybody here not know what that is?
I know what it is. I'm aware of it.
I have it via heredity. My dad has it. My great aunt had it. I'm 38 years old. I grew up in a time. I'm a late 80s, early 90s teenager generation. My junior high teacher, that asshole Harvey Tate, truly believed to the bottom of his heart that my condition was for fun, for play, that I was faking it the entire time. My parents are both morons. They're both idiots. I suffered under the regime of a Calvinist Baptist environment in southeast Louisiana. That's the hallmark of my life, my childhood. Right. I am in all forms and shapes that you can possibly comprehend a self-made man. I have never in my entire life received anything for free, ever, not even in childhood. Right? I was institutionalized twice before I was the age of 16. The second time, I purposely made it that way, just to get away from my parents. Right? I was under an entourage of the most invasive medications you can imagine. Everything from Haldol to Tofranil to everything. I was actually under experimental medications that were never even approved by the FDA. I was an under a human experiment for the drug tetrabenazine, which was never approved by the FDA. I suffered through many seizures from it. I'm technically, I'm not even supposed to be alive. And I was cast out into the streets, homeless more times I can count. And when I see this level of self-entitlement, and I fall under this category of so-called I don't need anything because I'm white, that disturbs me beyond belief. Beyond belief. And for anyone to say that a group is more responsible than an individual, or a group is more valuable, better said, more valuable than an individual, is sickening to me. Sickening. And that's all I got to say about that.
Okay, but you still haven't answered my question. Why and who the fuck said that? And why are you putting other people's shit onto me? That's what I'm getting at. You said that I said something, and then you drove it to all black people, or I hate when black people blank. How dare you?
Oh, dear God, before the mushroom cloud drops.
And so I am trying to understand where that's coming from.
Before the mushroom cloud drops, I want to try to say this as gently as I can, Kaiser Cube, not because I think you need handling with kid clubs, but I think that any time we make a direct reference to someone's specific situation, one must, unless they have done something to deserve otherwise, be as gentle as possible as a rule, okay? What happened to you? It spills the banks of the bounds of the English language to comprehend or even put it properly with true justice. Having said that, I think you would have to look very hard within a 10 by 10 square, 10 by 10 mile block area to find, at best, more than 2 people just like you. If we went
10 by 10 to the third power. Look, I'm just saying.
Okay, wait, hang on. Kaiser, please, Kaiser, I'm not done. Kaiser.
For their own responsibilities. That's what I'm saying.
Kaiser. And the thing is that what was done to you is not your fault. It was done to you. It's nothing that you could have done anything about. Okay. But what I think would be helpful to do is imagine a 10 by 10 mile block filled with people who, not necessarily as much as you, but in different ways and under different circumstances, have equally been kicked in the nuts. And I think now you have a better idea of a cross-section of the frustration that people of color and people of systematic disadvantage go through in the United States and to a lesser extent Canada.
No, and I'll tell you why. For one reason, one very specific reason. You cut me off when I said it before. People taking responsibility for their actions. That's simple. There's no rebuttal from that.
But you seem to be implying that Irene is the kind of person who doesn't take responsibility for her own actions.
And
but if you look at her specific, and that kind of person tends to be black, and that is really not true.
It's disgusting.
Both of you are making absolutely no correlation whatsoever. I have never had. Well, first off, I've never had the ability to put my issues onto an agenda, for one. All right. Number two, I have relied on my own self-reliance. And you know what? It worked out just fine. And
Okay, so you still haven't answered my question.
What I mean is asking you.
What is it about me that makes you believe that I don't do the same thing and haven't done the same thing? And more importantly, how dare you assume because I'm black, I haven't. I've relied on other people. Please explain that. You're the one who wrote it in.
It's what you're representing.
Oh God. Oh
my God.
What is she? Seriously? What is she representing? Wait, I want to hear a full account of this. What do you believe that she's representing, Kaiser Cube?
You're representing somebody being taken up on a pedestal for no reason whatsoever. Take whatever demographic you want.
Who's being exalted and why exactly? Hang on.
I just said take whatever demographic you want.
So you think?
May I try to clarify again?
No, I think I'm not done just yet. Please. Is it your belief that just about everybody in the United States is getting something a little special, but the white guy? Is that where we're going here?
No, you're still putting things outside of the individual. I'm said it from the very beginning. Why don't people just take responsibility for their own actions?
Most people do take responsibility for their own actions, Kaiser Cube. Some people, but some people have a better developed set of tools for doing that than others. Some people have a better set of privileges for doing that than others. Some people have a better set of circumstances than others. And sometimes people need help, and sometimes they need help as an identifiable group. That is a reality.
But none of that identifies you needed help.
The fact that you needed help and didn't get it is a caterwauling shame. But that's not an excuse to allow yourself to become bitter and to want to withhold that help to other groups that may need it now.
The difference is I'm talking about myself and you're talking about a demographic. You're not talking about yourself.
Well, it sounded to me like you were talking about.
No shit about me, and you were talking about me.
I'm not black. I don't identify with that demographic. I am saying that a demographic exists, and unfortunately, we are dealing in groups. You cannot pick apart a group and say this individual is worthy, that individual isn't, unless you're willing to sit down and listen to everybody's life, and better yet, unless you've been there or unless you've experienced similar circumstances. As a matter of fact, Kaiser Cube, I don't know if anybody could sit down and truly understand what you've been through, because you've been through some pretty fucking unique circumstances. So if that's the case for you, I think it's possible that that's the case for individuals making a group outside of you.
Well, how can a proxy be valid in the first place, then?
I'm sorry, would you say that again, please?
How can a proxy be valid in the first place in those conditions?
I don't think anybody's suggesting a proxy. Nobody's saying that airmean should that somehow airmean should represent the entirety of individuals of color in the United States.
Can she answer? I'd rather her answer that herself.
Well, you and I are having a discussion right now.
I think I've been crystal clear on that. I can't take on everything for black people. And the idea that you see me and what I represent as being the entire black race as if we're a monolith is disgusting.
May I stick my nose in? Okay, it's silent, so I'll kind of go for it. Kaiser, I would like to know if what you intended, if your intention, regardless of the words that came out, was the following. I perceive you as advocating for a certain kind of idea, and many other people, certain groups advocate for this idea, but I object to the idea that you are advocating. Is this accurate or inaccurate?
No, they're both accurate. I'm actually looking for a dynamic.
Okay. And the second point that I'd like to point out is I just want to bring everyone's attention. What are we discussing here? We are discussing self-responsibility, pulling yourself up from your bootstraps, and we're discussing caring for others.
And I
this
think
is the
when you
same,
stepped out
this
for
is,
3 minutes, you lost it, Francis. You stepped out for a long time and didn't hear the background.
I don't think he lost.
But I'm listening to it now. So I wanted to clarify, one, what he said, because I missed it. And the second part was I just wanted to bring everyone's attention. These are the two same values that are being discussed using various contexts. I'm over.
If that were true, oh God, I don't want to say her name wrong. Hermione.
Okay, let me help you out. It took me
were,
a while to learn it too. It's just air and then mean. That's it. It took me a while to learn it too, but it's a simple trick. You say the word air, then you say the word mean, you stick them together, you're good to go.
Okay, Hermine, if that were true, he wouldn't have been on point in the first place. He asked two questions that were both correct. I am looking for a dynamic answer. I'm not.
Then why did you bring up the blackness? I would have agreed with what he had to say as well, but you brought it to race. You included your own presupposition, your own stereotypes when you pulled in race.
Because it was necessary.
No, it was not necessary, unless that's the elephant in the room that you've been holding on to this entire time. I just gave you a recount of my life, which Francis didn't hear. And in it, I have pulled myself up by my bootstraps. The reason I don't follow that is two. I know that I've been one of the most fortunate people and have had a stroke of luck. And this first. And secondly, I know what my IQ is. I know that the vast majority of people that are in similar circumstances to being 17 and knock the you-know-what up do not have my IQ, do not have my fortunate circumstances, and thus might need more help to pull themselves out of the mess they got themselves into than I did. I am crystal clear and aware of that. And if you don't see it that way, that's your experience. Good for you. Kudos.
I do now. I didn't before, hence the necessary, but I don't have any way to. I'm not asking to be. Well, if I'm judged for that, if you want to judge me for that, I can't have any kind of say so. I have to accept that.
So, I mean, this is, I guess, one of the reasons why. If Google Plus Hangouts are good for anything, maybe this is it, right? I mean, the two of you may never have come across one another except for this, right? And so I think, I don't know, Kaiser, you've been through a rough life, right? You just want to be careful, in my opinion. You don't want to let what happened to you color how you see other people and what they go through. It's just too easy. It's too easy to sort of dehumanize people if you're not careful. That's kind of the way I'm seeing things.
Can you explain what you mean by dehumanizing? What do you mean by that?
So, for example, looking at Hermine and thinking of her as representative of a whole swath of people who either support or themselves take advantage of help that you not only didn't use or couldn't have used, but were disallowed from using. I mean, I can see that's really painful, but you still have to try your best to look at each individual as an individual. Otherwise, you are succumbing to the very thing that you're objecting to, and you're doing groupthink, and you're doing collectivism yourself.
Yeah, it's really hard to do that when you have a massive social culture of I call it fascism. I'll start call look, the Black Lives Matter movement. I will call it fascism because that's what it is.
Why
And I
is it
don't care.
fascism?
It is. It is
But
fascism.
why do you see it as fascism? Why?
Because the one-sidedness is unparalleled.
But
Unparalleled.
black people are being killed by police officers at record numbers comparing to white people in the United States.
All right, just totally ignore the
Fascism.
Can I just chime in a little bit, if I can? I don't want to steer the pot.
You chime in, and I'm just going to say real quick, I've got to go. I've got my own little individual responsibilities to attend to. I've got about 5 more minutes or so, so let's go ahead and have Fabio talk, and then maybe a couple of other people who want to sort of close things out, and then I'm going to have to take it off air.
So I understand I'm probably twisting the knife, in a wound, but I will address this point to Francis, which is I think is the person which doesn't need the point to be addressed at all in the angle, but just because we had an exchange before, and I'm not doing that because I think it didn't understand. I mean we made ourselves really clear, regardless if we agree or not. In Nazi Germany, there was a program called, and you can look out, it was called Aktion T4, which came from, the T4 was the abbreviation of Tiergartenstraße 4. It's an address in Berlin. The Action T4 program basically said that all the mentally unstable children and persons were to be delivered in appropriate structures where they will be cured and find new cures, for them. Why I'm saying that? I'm saying that, because of what I said before. One of the reasons why I don't want those people to talk. The Action T4 was a program which was widely accepted by all the German population. You shouldn't think that the police or the army went into the houses to get mentally unstable children, with any kind of instability and bring them in those structures. On the contrary, the families brought them into those structures. They were more than happy because they were told by the regime that they were being cured and new cure were being found. Guess
and
what
and
happened?
my parents would, if in that position, I guarantee you, my
Yes.
parents would have brought me to them.
Right.
And
So
you-
let's hear
and
what
you-
actually happened. Yeah. Go
And
ahead.
you will be dead. Those people were killed. They were gassed, they were shot, they were killed. And the rationale behind that, because that was the whole point behind the Action T4 program, was that there was a memo written by the chancellor that said, you know what, these people cost too much money. That's the amount of money which costs to the state in order for us to take care of those people. And the most brilliant way to deal with them in order for us to have a bigger country, and it wasn't even a better race at that point. It was an economic point of view. I don't know if you get that point. It wasn't race. It wasn't the Übermenschen. It was an economic point of view to say, you know what, we're going to save a shitload of money, and we will convince the people to bring all the children there, and we're going to shoot them. We're gonna bury them. We're gonna gas them. We're gonna kill them and burn them, so that we're gonna save a lot of money. And families were bringing the people in the places. Now you tell me that I should let someone which professes himself to be Nazi to talk to me? Are you fucking kidding me? Are you shitting me? I'm
I
done.
think that was to you, Francis.
No, it wasn't to Francis. No.
I'm sorry. I thought you were sort of making a general.
No, I was addressing to Francis, but I was using Francis because it was the one we had this exchange. It was just to further my point why I don't want to talk to these people. But Francis knew better that I was talking to him in order to address somebody else.
I understand.
Yes.
No, I take this personally. This is horrible.
Oh, fuck you, Francis. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't think that there's really much that I can add that we haven't that we haven't brought up before. So that having said, I understand where Fabio's coming from, and that's all I have to say for the moment.
Okay, well, so this is, on this light note, a good time to go off the air. I want to thank everybody, and Kaiser, it was very brave what you did. And so I want to thank you for, forcing me to open the hang, and also for bringing your honest sort of the way you view things out so that we could really get to the heart of the matter, even though we only touched lightly on it. And I'm going to go off air now because I've got to go pick up my kid and take individual responsibility. Thank you, everybody.